Good evening, ladies. Good evening, gentlemen, and welcome to Virtual Belcar here on YouTube for the fourth round of the Virtual Belcar Series 2023 from a new addition to iRacing indeed, the Motorsport Arena Oschersleben from Germany, virtual Germany. You might just add to that. My name is Hasse Römer, and once again, I am joined by the brilliant Edward May. Edward, it's been a long summer break, very long indeed, and it's just wonderful to be back, isn't it?
It really is. They say time flies when you're having fun, but we haven't had any entertainment to keep us going in the break between the two rounds, and it has felt like a long time since we were last at Manicourt. But I tell you what, the next 3 hours will definitely fly by with the entertainment we have here tonight with the virtual Belcar. 3 classes worth of action will keep us going all evening long. I can tell you we have currently the drivers out qualifying at the moment, Hassan, and it's looking very close all across the board, especially in BLC 3 for pole position.
5 thousandths of a second at the moment, separating pole sitters, the 100 BMW M4 GT4 machine of Anage competition, Eau Rouge, and the Traxxas by JWS Classic Cars. That is the number 6 Mercedes. Just in the final moments of qualifying here. It's been dominant so far from the 677 Valkyrie X-Type competition Audi, currently on pole, and it looks like it might just be a slight surprise as well, in the sense that there will be no Anage competition car on the front row. I'm sorry. My apologies. Christophe Herbignot here. Gunning for a front row seat for Boutsen VDS by undercut the 17 Audi. Of course, we will take you through the entireties of the grid order in a short manner indeed. Here in the pole sitter, yet again in BLC2, the Porsche Cup machines Valkyrie X-Type the 877, and piloted to pole by Norwegian driver Roger Christiansen. And then the 10 Anage Porsche here of David Sobrero going to take second place, as it seems. I think we might still have a few hot lappers out there. No, that's Benjamin De Pape. Fourth place for the ART Sim Racing 2 machine. So we'll go through the grid. We'll see if we can just catch up on the championship standings. If not before the start of the race, then as soon as the race settles in, there are some very good tight fights here. We've passed the halfway marker of the season, but we do have some very interesting racing as well, Edward, to follow this one. We're heading to Bathurst, and then of course the fabled 24 hours of Zolder in December, which is gonna be a grand spectacle. I think I can pretty safely promise that. With that said, we're waiting for the session to take over. A very good evening to everyone. Hello to everyone joining us in chat. Of course, a grand pleasure having you along as always. The eternal wisdom, as we've seen so many times, whenever a question arises, basically from the minds of Edward and myself, and we're not able to answer it, someone in chat will be there to feed us a bit of that wisdom indeed. Very, very nice. And Edward, we do have a grid order ready to run through.
Yes, we do. And we'll start with the BLC1 grid, where it is Valkyrie X-Type competition, who are on pole position with Boutsen VDS by undercut there on the front row with them. Then it's Arnage competition of Carlos Duiguez taking to the second row of the grid with Mathieu Soufi alongside him, the Veraco eSports Whites car. Then we have Sim Racing BE on the third row, fifth place, with Sim Formula Europe alongside Bavo Follon in sixth. Then we have the Simpact car in seventh with the Bravo by Hoyer Time in eighth, with Reiter Racing Panda and RPM GT rounding out our BLC1 grid at the start. We have a little bit of time, I think, because we have the full pace lap. So let's take us through BLC2, Hasse.
Yes, indeed. As mentioned before, it's the 877 Valkyrie X-Type Porsche Cup machine of Roger Christiansen on pole position, joined by David Sobrero and our competition in the number 10 machine there on the front row. Row 2 will be ART Sim Racing, full of it, with the 11 car in front of the 12 car. And then RPM with Aaron Baba ahead of Lucas Romano for DBR on row 3. Jorrit Svenen for Team Vision ahead of the beautiful number 3 BLC2 Porsche of DBRP, driven by Michel Costers. Sibo Berrebrooks for Brab is in 19th overall, and on the final row of BLC2 machines joining him, the other Brab car of Sean Van Limt. And with that, Edward, there is a class left. Usually it's exciting. It's BLC3.
Yes, it is, and it was very close there for pole position. Fabrice Cornes in our large competition, taking top honours in qualifying ahead of Crispin by about 5,000ths of a second. Exciting to see how they will match up in these opening few laps. Then we have Valkyrie X-Type GT4. They had some good pace in practice, maybe not just able to get the lap fully completed within the 30 minutes of qualifying. They will start on the second row of the BLC3 grid with the Simworld BE Rapid machine alongside them. Then we come down to Fastlane Motorsport on the third row. Fifth position, that is Chris Van Gucht with Kimber Hates alongside him in the Viraco eSports Black machine. Then we have Digitrax Sim Racing with Glenn Grandelars, the 999 car with Matthias Ronzani, Eagle Speed Academy, lining up alongside him. It's then down to Arnage Competition, the 101 car of Rune Babas with Stefan Lejeune, the Squadron of Veloce machine, the 446. There with the final row of the grid being taken up by Eagle Speed Academy and Vesno Motorsport. That's Luc Lemoy and Pierre-Yves Dessut. So here we go, Hasse. The cars are getting ready on their full pace lap around this Oschersleben circuit. And what can you expect us to see in these opening few laps?
Well, I'd expect to see quite a lot of action. It is a track that I'm not terribly familiar with, to say the very least, Ed, but it's the first race that I commentate around here. I haven't even driven it as well. So it's a brand new territory for me, as it will be for so many of the drivers. Not quite sure if we'll be having the time to take a look at the championship standings. I think it's going to be a little bit stressed. So apologies for that. But we will be taking a glance at it at the first opportune moment, if the race so ever decides to calm down. We'll see in not too long. A track that has had actually quite a bit of positive energy surrounding it in the community, at least from what I've been able to make out, and perhaps a track that reminds some of the drivers of some of the more old school kind of circuits here. Not a lot of tarmac runoff, though plenty of grass, plenty of gravel as well to go on into, and that's it's a fairly devilish thing to get your car around. With that said, Edward, we're about to go green here on round 4 of the virtual Belcar series through the tight right-hander that leads on to the start-finish straight, and then it will be the Valkyrie, and that is indeed the green flag. Caught me by a little bit by surprise, but with the field streaming down towards turn 1, it'll be interesting to see if everyone's gonna make it around. So far, by the looks of it, we've jinxed this before, Edward, but a very clean start through. I was just about to say it. Oh, and oh my word.
What have you done, Hasse? What have you spoken into existence? That is a car park down the way, a huge roadblock being formed as we've got some even BLC 1 cars stuck in the midst of all of that drama. Dear oh dearie me. Carlos Vegas unscathed in the front. Christopher Fries up alongside him. As Belcar up into third position for Reuter Racing Panda. It was all the way back down. There was some big shuffling, and actually one of the big losers out in all of that was Jonathan Poulet. He was seemingly dropping down a few positions from the start, and I want to see exactly how all of that unfolded.
Yeah, so do I. And I'm looking for the root cause of the problem, basically, in our event viewer, but it's fairly eventful as we complete the first lap. A huge spread as well. Not many survivors in BLC1. That is a fairly decimated field. I'm afraid to say it in BLC2 as well. It's all a mix-up. The BLC3 machines are almost into the top 10 here with Fabrice Cornelis. Obviously, that is not going to last for a full 3 hours, but Edward still just working on finding out just where that... There we have the green flag. Here we have a problem for Jonathan Poulet, the pole sitter, making a little bit of contact with the Boutsen car. They both go off. A lot of going off happening, basically. And that is coming with a camera that comes back on to the carnage that I'm afraid we did see before here. Martin van Ruijwijk for Simpact was very much involved, and perhaps going on board with the Dutchman here is going to tell us a little bit more. That's Jonathan Poulet's view. It looked a little bit strange there, Edward, from the two. We're going to try again here to see if we can get a view from Van Ruijwijk's guy. He's just a bit further back. So that's just a
little bit aggressive from Van Ruijwijk, just pushing hard to try and find those gaps, and sadly there was a car on the outside that was always going to be trying to rejoin the circuit. When you're that opportunistic, sadly those can turn against you, which is very unfortunate, and risk that was taken a bit too early. But maybe it was also maybe a sign of rustiness creeping in. It's the first time we've seen these drivers out and about on the circuit for a long time. Maybe it was just some jitters creeping in on the first lap.
Very hard to say, I think, but we have Firaco eSports leading now from Carlos Diegues. So I don't know what happened to Diegues there. Van Ruijwijk jumped to the pits after leaving the pit lane, so he must have had an issue. Yeah, that car wasn't driving at all. But Firaco eSports, the 14 car leading, they'll be happy with the not alone getting through that start unscathed. But yeah, not my proudest moment of calling that a clean start, and then that happening. There are moments in your life when you, for a short moment, wish that you could just turn back time a few seconds and say something else. This might have been one of them for me, I'm afraid.
As Valkyrie X-Type have just made a move up the order, and I think actually Christoph Herbenjov has made up a position as well for Boutsen VDS. Writer Racing Panda losing 2 positions in a rather short space of time. They're going to try and fight back into turn 1, but instead concede that 5th position. I think we just caught the tail end. I want to see how Boutsen VDS made the move first, because it wasn't long afterwards that we saw Valkyrie carve their way back through. Here's a look, and it's just on account of a little mistake, actually, more than anything else. This was actually the change for the lead. Carlos Diegues with a little error, just running a bit too wide. I'll see what happened with Hans Blankart and Writer Racing Panda, because there was a shift later on as well. Potentially might have been at roughly the same time as well. Easy to do it though, isn't it, Hasser? A circuit you might not be familiar with, just pushing a bit too hard in these open few laps and then getting gobbled up. Look at that though. Really nicely done by Christophe Herbenjov. Set up wonderfully for a nice little switcheroo. And then look at that. Diving up the inside goes Jonathan Poulet, Valkyrie X-Type competition, seizing the opportunity. You can see that Hans was driven slightly offline, wasn't able to take the corner in the optimal fashion, and was then just caught unawares.
An interesting thing as well from BLC2 that the championship leading 877 machine has fallen down into 4th place here at the early stage.
I think actually as well, 877 car was involved in that early incident and took a fair old whack sideways into one of the Armco barriers.
Oh, that is probably true.
I think they might have gotten away with it, but I did see them have a bit of a brush.
And it could look like they are A little bit in the vulnerable zone. Here's the 12 car, the ART sim racing machine, having a bit of a lunch there. And behind them is the sim racing BE by ROI management machine, driven by David van Glabeke. He's gonna swing first one way, then the other to make his way through. Jo Vegard Guderstad in the 877 machine at the moment. And down in BLC 3, Fabrice Cornelis has taken the lead from Paul Tastens here in the 777 Mercedes. And then Steven de Leersnyder, not too far off in the 114 SimWorld.be Rapid BMW. But a lot of chaos on the opening lap. And still the 14 car of Christoph Raas leading the way and doing a very, very good job of not only keeping Carlos Dieguez at bay, but Christoph Urbino and the rest of the bunch as well. We're not really seeing any sort of power plays here in BLC1. Still in the pits is both RPM, Erin Papa, and Martin van der Rijwijk in the Simpac Noises car.
Very close in BLC2 for a moment. Arnage Competition Pink looked to try and get ahead of the DBR machine of Lucas Romano. Lucas held on firm. The Belgian driver doing a very good job, but is he going to be able to withstand this? Look at that, just closing the door, squeezing David down at the apex, leaving him nowhere really to go but to back out. We have a Lamborghini, I think just up on the inside, that's trying to get past, but it's always going to be a struggle when they've got cars battling for the lead up ahead. So that's the 33 in behind the Lamborghini of James Slights. You can just see it there, the traffic jam that gets formed behind the battle. Around this circuit, of course, there are plenty of opportunities for cars to make moves up the inside, but there aren't those heavy braking zones until you get towards that final sector. Of course, that tends to be the place where drivers make the moves into those braking zones. So we might be seeing a move here as Arnage Competition Pink looking up the inside, and there's contact, and it's going to send them into a spin. Oh my word. Amazing that it was just the one car taken out of the action there. David van Glabeke with extra damage to contend with on his Audi R8. This was a little bit cheeky up the inside. It left enough of a gap, and I think Lucas Romano just squeezed a little bit too much on the apex. I'm not sure what you make of that one, Hasse.
Gotta go on board with the 10 car here. See if we can become any wiser to it.
We're on the curb.
There isn't really any way to make the car shrink here and there. It was a little bit of an optimistic send as well. Not really with any chance of making it stick through that corner. But you have to expect as well that drivers will be trying that in order to sort of ruin the run of the opposition onto the start-finish straight and then have a better chance coming into turn one. So for me, that was a bit of a racing incident. We'll see if the stewards take the same lenient view on that. But it was a very slight contact. It was very much a case of the iRacing damage model as well and physics model being prone to spinning the cars at the softest of contact, especially at the sort of the 1 o'clock area, call that. So we'll see if there's any action coming from the stewards, but for once, I wouldn't actually be surprised to see that deemed a racing incident.
Yeah, potentially. I think earlier on in the race, the stewards can be a little bit more lenient with the battles as close as they are and the congestion out on the circuit. I was a little bit later into the race, but you can see that the contact was made while the car on the inside had a wheel onto the curb, and it wasn't like they were massively overshooting the corner and going to be running wide. I think it was just one of those racing incidents where the drivers misjudged the amount of space being given. In any case, great little battle this. between Arnage Competition, Eau Rouge, and Valkyrie X-Type GT4. Valkyrie, I was going to say coming into this round, were certainly favourites for at least one victory in their classes across the board, obviously with good pace in the BLC 2 class, in BLC 1 as well. It looks like it might be BLC 3 where those honours will be going as it stands. Of course, it's early days, but at the moment they are the highest placed Valkyrie car in their class, shall we say. Because it's X-Type competition in BLC 1 down in 4th place. 4th place again in BLC 2. Second at the moment in BLC 3.
Yeah, overall, a very, very strong team that seems to, of course, always be there or thereabouts. Nexus got a real hit with that crash. That is, of course, true. Yiri Crispin in the number 6 car has taken a little bit of a dump down through. Oh, they haven't taken a dump. My apologies. They've been dumping down a little bit through standings and are now 6th in class. But oh my, it has been a long summer break, hasn't it? Oh, that looked like a cent and a half. He did come in a little bit hot through there, but really trying to pressure. Flashing lights going on here. He's trying to pressure Kimby Haidt. He wants that position. He's gonna send it from however back it might have to be here. Kimby Haidt's all the way on the curb, and Kimby Haidt's probably not gonna be too excited about that sort of driving from Yiri Crispin, but he's a man on a mission at the moment. So we'll be following the number 6 car's journey and their travails back up through the pack. A very close, what is that, a 5-way battle more or less here, but a little bit of traffic, so to say, being held up. Well, the only difference being that this is, of course, all for position. So we are heading into the first 15 minutes of racing, meaning also that the drivers that did make it through that lap 1 incident without any serious damage will be getting into the rhythm by now. At least they'll be hoping to. If not, we're bound to have a terrible time.
Just note something as well, Hassett. Valkyrie X-Type 877 definitely have a problem. They've dropped back now in behind DBRP.
Oh,
we saw that was a battle that was ongoing, and with the damage that they sustained earlier on, I'm not sure if that's just my eyes, but that car does not look like it's driving straight here, Hassett.
Well, they definitely
Maybe
look like
have a look from the onboard, but it looked a little bit unhappy there. We'll see out onto the straight, but well, next time we get a chance to see them on a straight. But by my reckoning, that car is slightly having to be held to the right-hand side. You can see there the steering wheel is angled to the right, and the car is going straight. So they're having to nurse that for a long time as well if they want to make it to the crossover point on the 2-stop strategy, which is what we expect these drivers to be making. Of course, we have the driver change rules. There needs to be two driver swaps in each class, if I remember rightly.
Yeah, that is very much true.
And obviously we swapped out for a driver that's already raced before, but they just need to do the change at least twice.
So we had a move here from, I was just watching, and that was Bavo Fallen in the BLC 1 machine on a BLC 3 car, so maybe not the most fair of passes to be showing off as such. Matthias Ronzani, though, has been getting his way through on Rune Bobers in the 101 machine, and that is a move and a half there at May from the Evil Speed Academy Mercedes, and getting it done cleanly as well. So really showing that where there's a will, there most certainly is a way. I think Simpact Noises is back out running with repairs to the car. But what a terrible start. They are a number of laps down. But there will be points to be picked up. And they are in a good position as well in the championship. So I guess it is indeed worth fighting for. Christoph Raas there, beginning to feel the pressure from Carlos Dieguez. But Dieguez there and immediately getting held up by traffic. And it's actually a lot more the other way around, because Christoph Herbigno is really on the tail of him. And just behind these two, Jonathan Poulet is hanging out there.
Then all of a sudden, the traffic is going to work against Christoph Reis, because you can see now right behind the Eau Rouge BMW has to stick it all the way around the outside, coming into the second to last corner. Very smartly done there by the 100 car. I think that was all Fabrice Cornelis, just to avoid any confrontation, any fight, because that's not something you really want to be involved with. Look at them just having to car through. It's just how difficult it is for the BLC1 cars with the pace difference. It's not the greatest of differentials, but it's still enough that it's slightly easier than having to overtake the BLC2 machines. Look at that, squeezing his way up the inside. Christoph Herbigno quickly followed by Jonathan Poulet.
And now there might be a move coming as well.
That organised.
Look at that, Ronzani is making a move here. Oh, and there's going to be a moment as well for Kim Beheid as he goes off. Manages to keep it under control there, well held on the grass by the Belgian veteran, you could say, safely say, I think, in sim racing terms. This is a man that has done many races by now, and I think the coolness that is required in a situation like that. Just have another look at that, Edward, see just what happened.
Well, it's just a little bit of a tap onto the grass on the way into the corner, unsettled it very well to keep it out of the Armco barriers on the left-hand side of the circuit, because they were fast approaching when he got into that slide. Large competition, Eau Rouge set the fastest lap in the BLC3 class. Belcar GT4 set their fastest lap of the race, but not enough to close down. Carlos Dieguez keeping the pressure mounted up behind Christoph Reis and the number 14 Veraco eSports white car. And here is the battle of the BLC2 class with David Sobrero with Chris Lovers in behind. Gap is around about 7/10 of a second, so it's still very close, but they have been able to pull away from the 12 car, the ART Sim Racing 2 machine that's a little ways further back.
I think the 101 machine here is struggling ever so slightly as well, Edward. They've been dropping down the order and falling into the clutches of Glenn Rundelers and the Digitrax sim racing team, the 999 machine. They've taken over that number. Quite close enough to make the move. As it stands, onto a Lulap goes Christoph Raas. Carlos Dieguez, though. I think he's beginning to really smell blood here, because he's been closing in on the Veraco car over the last few laps, and especially it seems like that traffic management, Edward, is going to be very important here at Oschersleben tonight.
We've seen that be the difference maker so many times in this championship. The ability for the drivers to use the cars around them in other classes to their advantage. And our large competition are some of the very best in the business at doing exactly that. They will have stiff competition in behind, as well as obviously the car in front currently leading this race. Certainly on merit, the management of the early phase of the race working wonders for the number 14 Veraco eSports white machine. Have a BLC2 car just up the road they will dive up the inside of. Might just slow down Carlos Dieguez a touch, not by a whole lot, but you can see that it's a little bit difficult for Carlos to make the move done. Has to dive up the inside. Loses some ground though, so that gap extends to just over a second. Traffic gives, but it also takes away, as we can see here. So a little bit unhappy on the exit as well. On top of the gravel. Struggling to put the power down. It's all on a knife edge, isn't it? Even though it's over the course of 3 hours, the drivers are pushing like it's a qualifying lap every single time. BLC 3 started to cool off just a little, as has BLC 2 as well, actually. Our Nash Competition Pink extending a bit of an advantage now to ART Sim Racing in behind. Getting close, actually, in the BLC 1 class. It's basically this battle for the lead, which is the closest action out on circuit. And look at this. Christophe Urbaniot has been caught off guard very wide through the right-hander. And they go side by side through the chicane. A little bit of door banging, but I think just about ahead throughout all of that came Jonathan Poulet. Really elbows out racing. Had to get it done perfectly because there could have been a penalty coming his way should that have been misjudged in any shape or form. That was about as close as you want it to get out on the circuit at this early stage of the race. We're not even half an hour in, and already we've had some sketchy moments as diving up the inside, catching the Mercedes off guard. That was the 777 of Paul Dasons, I believe, just getting overtaken. This is the BLC 3 leader that they are coming up to now. Fabrice Cornelis in that 100 Arnage Competition Eau Rouge BMW. So far, so good, and we've seen some good races from that BMW. Car that is not necessarily the most popular in its GT4 class in iRacing officials, but it's still a very competitive car over the course of a race distance. It's very nice on the tyres, as is that Mercedes, to be fair. So it's intriguing to see how the strategies will come into this race. Bit of a battle, I think, for, is that 8th place, I think, in BLC 3? I think that is between Glenn Grondelars. Actually, it's for 7th place. It's Ruin Babars and Glenn Grondelars. They're
and that's
fighting away.
It's the Digitrax car from before that has been catching up over the last few laps. Does look like the 101 car is in a spot of bother here as well. It's been a heartbreak as well for Simpact Noises, I'm afraid, tonight. They've thrown in the towel 4 laps down, and after that early incident, and from what looked like a car that wasn't quite able to be fixed up properly. And that is a real shame and a real hit for a team that has been doing such a good job of being very, very consistent throughout the opening half of the season. Basically, their first real incident, I think, at least from memory. And that leads me on to just take a look at the championship standings, because in BLC1, Arnage Competition GT3 leads, but by a meager 8 points down to the Valkyrie X-Side competition. All also open still for the win in BLC1. Simpact Noise is coming into this round third with 35 points, but just 3 points ahead of the Sim Racing BE by ROI Management. Then Bootsen by VDS Undercut also on 32 points, and Firaco Esports Wide on 21. Sim Formula Europe 18 and JWS Motorsports 11, and then the rest of the bunch following there. In BLC2, it's the 877 having a pretty healthy 24-point lead there ahead of the RPM machine. I don't think is actually racing here tonight. And there's been a little bit of team switching up as well over the summer break, so just how that's reflected in the standings, I'm not quite sure, at least for the season moving forward. But GTE Racing by Xenon is 4th ahead of DBR. ART Sim Racing, the ART Sim Racing 1 machine, that is in 6th place. ART Sim Racing 2, I think, I didn't quite mention that, but they are sitting 3rd in BLC2, so a good season for them so far. And then the number 10 Arnage Competition car, just 16 points so far, they'll be hoping to make up a little bit of ground on that regard. In BLC 3, it is indeed the number 6 Traxxas by JWS Classic Cards that leads proceedings with 62 points to their name. But Simworld BE Rapid, the 32 car, still within a shouting distance, to say the very least, just 7 points down at 55. And then the 100 Anage competition Eau Rouge, which I think we could fairly say were champions or championship favorites, at least in BLC 3 coming into the season. They're very much there as well. 50 points, 12 points off of the leader, of course, with a haul of points still to be fought for at the 24 hours of Solder, let alone with Bathurst coming up as well. Still a lot to happen. I think in fair conclusion, we can say that none of the classes have in any way been closed off and sealed by anyone at this point.
No, definitely, and that's my favourite thing about this championship is that it really does all come down to that important round at the end of the season, the 24 hours of Zolder, with the numerous volleys of points that are on offer. It really does leave it open for so many drivers and teams to turn things around right at the very end and cause some excellent drama. Speaking of drama, that was the move by Jerry Crispin for 4th place in the BLC 3 class, and this is Glenn Grobbelaars, the 999, getting ahead of Run Babas. That was a move that was, I think, well, a little while in the making, it's fair to say. I want to see Yuri Crispin, the Traxxas by JDRS Classic Cars car, what pace he can muster now, because that Fastlane Motorsport car was holding him up just a touch, but of course there was quite hefty front end damage to the 912 car.
And some very good damage limitation as well by the number 6 after just about half an hour and a dreadful start to the race. But they've fought back quite well. They're up into 4th place in class, and they'll be hoping to be able to build on that and work their way onto the podium. They are at least in a very, very strong position coming into this race in the standings as championship leaders, and that should give them all the motivation they need to push on to the best of their abilities. Of course, it is a draw of luck as well, being involved in an early days incident, as has been the case for so many of the teams. Just how badly is the car going to be affected? Just how much damage have you sustained? And the competitiveness of the machine following an incident as such is random at best, and very much out of your control. So they'll be, I think, mostly just happy that they live to fight another lap here at Oschersleben. Jonathan Poulet still sitting there in 3rd place. He did squeeze through an Urbano a bit earlier, and he's made good on what seems like a pretty decent run of form. So far, Edward, I have to say the surprise of the race for me, at least so far in BLC 1, has been the Firaco eSports car. They've done such a good job. Christoph Raas with a beautiful drive over the course of the opening stint so far, at least, to keep Carlos Dieguez not only at bay, but to keep it at a quite sustainable 2.5, where, of course, the pink Lambo in the back is very much there, but it's not an immediate threat. You won't feel Dieguez breathing down his neck here, and that's going to be quite an advantage there.
We have the BLC. The BLC 2 car, the Valkyrie machine of the. Which one is that? That's the 877 coming out of the pits. That's getting the damage repaired because that was quite terminal. So it's good to see them back out onto the circuit. They come out in a slightly awkward spot, though, don't they? Just ahead of Carlos Dieguez and that Arnage competition Lamborghini. I think they've gotten out of his way, but it certainly held up that Lamborghini, the number 1 car, the reigning champions, just a touch. Not deliberately, of course, but that's just sometimes the way the traffic goes. And that's giving Christoph Raas an even bigger advantage now, over 2 seconds ahead of his rivals for the race lead. Could be a very important moment in their championship for Viraco eSports White. There's still time to go in this season as well, with rounds to go at Bathurst and the 24 Hours of Zolder. Christoph Raz starting up the inside, wasting no time whatsoever in getting ahead. You can see the chasing pack in behind as well. Actually, it looks like Valkyrie X-Up Competition could soon be bearing down on the car in second place, because at the moment they have had some very good pace. Their last laps have been quick as well, some of the quickest in the BLC1 division. Might be soon we'll start to see them battling for second place and maybe even the race victory, because that is, I think, going to be the championship fight in BLC1 Hasso between Valkyrie X-Type Competition and Arnage Competition.
That's a very good point. Just wondering what happened. Oh, there it is. So the EHC car, not that far down, but in a tight spot here in terms of traffic. Chris Lowers isn't going to be enjoying this for one bit whatsoever, as he's trying to just sneak on through. There he is, getting through on the Viraco eSports Mercedes of Kim Beheit. And then the 992 machine. But of course, that is at this point a lap car. It's Lucas Vanant, who, by the look of things, maybe should be letting the 11 car getting through, as he's not the class leader, so it won't be the difference between going a lap down on the leader or not. But at the moment, it does look like he's ever so slightly holding up Chris Lowers, and by the powers that be, Edward, it seemed to happen. Christoph Raz still doing a very good job. It's Carlos Dieguez clawing it back from whatever time was lost in that traffic moment that we saw just a few minutes ago, Edward. But it's been clawed back, but not by a lot.
No, certainly not. And depending on the way the traffic goes again, that could start to open out. We were talking about how well Carlos and the Arnage Competition have been doing in terms of the traffic management, but it hasn't been plain sailing, and we've started to see it maybe work against them. It could just be down to bad luck, but it could also just be down to Viraco eSports White being able to just do a little bit better job of that at the moment. You can see in clear air, Carlos Dieguez has the slightest of edges, potentially. But look at this huge amount of traffic now, just ahead of Christoph Rise. Look at that. That's going to be an absolute nightmare to get through.
And yet at the same time, Edward, if you're the driver in a car that tends to gain on the opposition every time you head into traffic, you're going to be wanting more of it. And of course, you can't always be on the lucky end of things, but there is a thing to be said about certainly patience. Really, patience and timing, and sort of being able to judge if you're going to be able to make the move in time or not. And if not, you'll be needing to hold off in time, as there's almost a bit of inter-team touching there between the two Viraco cars, of course, in two different classes, but all the more. Look at this, though. As I said before, coming into traffic, and then Dieguez.
Oh, dearie me. That was just hesitancy from both of them. Yeah. Carlos was looking to the inside, but then backed out of it. But then so did the BMW that he was trying to pass. I think that might have been, was that Delir Schneider that he was trying to get through on?
I'm not quite sure. It's the green BMW. If that was
yeah, that wouldn't be. That would be Rune Babar's, the 101, I think.
No.
Is it not?
No, that's.
I thought I saw the. I thought I saw the 8 on there. Oh, for some reason I saw the 8 on the LED strip. So maybe even further back. Might be Stefan Lejeune.
That's probably a good shout. Yes, indeed. There we have the Squadra Veloce by Fastlane Motorsports.
It was just hesitancy, wasn't it? They were both unsure of what they were doing.
And hesitancy in these situations, it might sound strange, but it often comes with trying to be a little bit overcautious, and it ends up being the most dangerous thing you could probably do, because for what it's worth, the best thing you can do is to be predictable, and once you start being hesitant around things and around other cars in traffic, it's very, very hard to be predictable, because you're bound to be doing something that isn't really in the normal flow of things, you might say. So with that regard, it's about knowing when to send, and if not, then being clear about the fact that you're going to wait in behind. Of course, it isn't as easy done as it's said, by any means. But I think that anyone who's done his fair share of endurance races will know that it is indeed the name of the game. And still, Christoph Raas doing a very, very good job. It's yet again up to over 2 seconds. And of course, this is a long race, Edward, but it must be really spurring them on here. Firaco eSports, the 14 car, from memory at least, leading a race for the first time this season.
Yeah, definitely. I think they've had a few times when they've been ahead on pit strategy, but not in terms of, raw race pace of where they find themselves. So it's very good for them at the moment. And it's not like they're leading by a slim amount. They're certainly being very convincing in the fashion they are ahead by. And of course, the traffic is part of that, but everyone's in the same boat. Everyone's got to deal with the traffic the best way they can do. Like this way, Jonathan Poulet looking around the outside to then carve up the inside. That was very nicely done. You can see that they carry the momentum nicely through the corners. It'll be a struggle to get up the inside through here. Thinks better of it. Backs off. Instead focuses on the run out of the corner to power up at the next overtake opportunity. A little bit of hesitancy by the car up ahead. That was one of the Arnage competition cars. It's Carlos Degas now has to get around the 999. Just about does so. Jonathan Poulet there, ahead of Christophe Urbignot. We are coming up to the 40-minute mark. Still no signs that drivers will be making their pit stops just yet. But in around about 20 minutes, we might start to see a flurry of activity in the BLC1 class. This is a circuit where you can save the fuel through these fast corners. Bit of lift and coast can go a long way to making the fuel work. Obviously, the drivers will be aiming for the 1 hour mark in BLC1 to make it on a 2-stop strategy.
Yeah, that's been imperative, especially on the tracks throughout the season, where the drivers are spending a little more time than you'd expect that they're doing here. A lot of coasting indeed. Also just through the corners, we got these long complexes of relatively slow and medium speed corners. That's not going to be equal to a track that's going to be heavy on fuel race. So, but it's true, Thomas. The 6 hours of Spa seems such a long time ago by now, but they were in the lead during that first stint. So, again, it's just my memory being a little bit like a sponge sometimes. Some of the water that it holds is bound to be released. And so it is like with memories as well. Without getting too philosophical on things here, Christophe Urbignot is having a mighty old time. He was getting fairly close to the rear end of Jonathan Poulet, but as we've said so many times, Edward, it's with traffic that it giveth and taketh away. But he is seeming to be gaining, and so they're both seeming to be gaining at the moment on the Arnage car. And for once, Edward, the gap from Christoph Raas, look at that gap down to the Arnage car, 4.2 seconds. So Firaco is really putting down the hammer here in traffic. And of course, it will be very interesting to see if they're doing a lap or two less on the pit stops, if that's going to be a disadvantage in any way come the later stages of the race. Of course, there's also something to be said for that the race has not truly started until everyone, all of the drivers, has been in the cars. But with that said, it's better to lead by 4 seconds than to be behind by 4 seconds, and they're enjoying the benefits of that at the moment, as this battle for third is really heating up here.
Terrible for Jonathan Poulet. Just can't get ahead of Chris Lowers. The second place car in BLC2 finally is able to do it, but when the overtake happens, the cars in behind all breeze by as well, so it's no real benefit for Jonathan Poulet there. He's just stuck with the train of cars in behind him, as close as you like.
We've had some incidents, I'm afraid, as well here. We're just going to have a look. Oh, touching the curb a slight bit too much. Just a short off track as well here. I think it might be a little bit worse for this one for Stefan Legain, who's touched by the Boutsen car. And this one we hadn't seen, Edward. That might spell trouble for the Boutsen VDS by undercut machine. This could be a penalty incoming for the contact there with the 446. I wasn't quite able to see whether it was any particular fault of one of the drivers, but it didn't really seem that way. Yuri Crispain is now on to the podium places, and we saw him just a moment ago with the fastest lap of the race so far in the BLC 3 class, so they are really gunning on all fronts at the moment, and just over 10 seconds down on the 100 Anage Competition Eau Rouge car, so certainly not out of it by any means. Paul Tastens in the Valkyrie X-Type GT4 car has done a brilliant job so far as well to stay up there. He's in second place at the moment, and within 2 seconds of the class leader, so very much in contention still. And actually a car that, or a class, I'm sorry, that has been hit by a fair bit of attrition. BLC 2 is also where we see the biggest gaps at the moment, at least for the lead itself, with just under 7 seconds separating the Anage Competition Pink. That is, of course, the number 10 car with the ART Sim Racing car. 4 seconds is the lead for Christoph Raas, still here in front of the Anage Competition car, the number 1 machine driven by Carlos Diegues. And looky look here, Edward, it's time for us to get our spectacles on, because Christoph Herbigno is wanting to return the favor. We saw these two banging doors earlier, and there might be more to come right about now.
Yeah, speaking of spectacles, that was certainly one that we just saw looking right at the side. Christoph Herbigno tried his luck, just telling Jonathan Poulet that he'll be there if he ever makes a mistake or gets forced in disadvantageous position through the traffic. You can see now that Valkyrie car looking all the way around to try and get past some traffic. Christoph Herbigno is going to get stuck here. Will then probably have to dart to the inside. Won't be able to do so, and actually there's a car up the inside. That's one of the cars trying to unlap itself, actually. That is... Let's have a look at that. That's the 61 car, I believe. Is it 61? Yes, it is, of David Van Glaberke, but the damage is too bad on that car, and it doesn't have any straight line speed whatsoever, so immediately drops back. But that's given Jonathan Poulet some more breathing space to work with, which is sorely needed. But breathing space out in front, when he's got acres of it, doesn't he? The Ferrari eSports white car and Christoph Rice really enjoying life out in front, with clear track ahead and clear track behind in a little bubble of his own.
2 seconds gained on that last lap alone. So whether they're running lighter on fuel, whether they're able to push a little bit harder, or whether they're just being dialed, not only just from lapping consistently, but especially through the traffic, it seems, at least to my humble eyes. Christoph Raas has been doing such a good job over these opening 45 minutes. He'll be happy to see his opening stint come to an end before too long. He needs to keep it tight and on point for another, well, just about 15 minutes. And it'll be a pretty much perfect opening stint done for Christoph Raas. Again, a little bit of a spread happening throughout the traffic further down. But it's also a thing worth noting that once you get a little bit of a gap, you tend to catch the traffic ahead in slightly different places. And sometimes they can just keep on playing into your hand for a relatively, sorry, Hendrik, but for a relatively long amount of time. And that could be so frustrating when you're behind someone, basically still being able to see them and then seeing them catching the traffic in all the right places, and all you can do is run along and encounter that very same traffic just a few moments later, where it's not so opportune and you're gonna lose time every single time that happens to you. It's very hard for a driver not to have that build up, just a little bit of frustration, a little bit of that red mist that you so want to avoid in a race like this.
Absolutely. A cooler head is the one that tends to prevail the best. But at the moment, it's just about working on realizing that it's the first hour. It's not really going to be race ending if you find yourself maybe 5 seconds back from the cars you're looking to overtake, because there's so much more time. Of course, it makes your job easier being the car ahead, but it's not over until the checkered flag drops. That's when the points are scored. It's going to be slightly different, of course, at the 24 hours of Zolder, when the points are scored. I believe, is it every 6 hours? I'm trying to remember now, Haas. I believe that's the format that they have every...
I think it's at 6,
12, and then 24.
Exactly, yeah.
There we are. So it's going to be slightly different in that situation where obviously you want to maximum, well, you want to be as high up as possible throughout the course of the race, not just at the end. But it's still something for the drivers to think about, of course. But for now, it's just all about focusing on where you are at the checkered flag. Drivers might try alternative strategies. They might go for the undercut, maybe an overcut by extending the fuel and having a short final stint. So we're going to see. We're going to see exactly how this race develops. But at the moment, it's brilliant for Viraco. This is, like we said earlier, so it's exactly what they need for their championship. They've had some rotten luck earlier on this season, and I think now they're getting just reward for their perseverance.
And they could be looking to jump the Boots and BDS by undercut car with this result, but also the Sim Racing BE and Simpack noises. And if they keep up a result like this at the finish line, they might just be looking at gunning for the podium. And of course, that said, it's 2 hard rounds that remain as well. Going to be visiting Bathurst for a 4-hour race the next time around. That's going to be on October 20th. October 20th it is. But that's going to be an interesting one for sure. Because I think the old mountain always produces in terms of drama and action. And we rarely see multi-class racing from there, so that's going to be something very, very watchworthy, I think, to say the very least. It's going to be a few hours in driving hell in some regards for the drivers. I wouldn't necessarily want to do it myself. At least the thought of having to pass traffic over the back end of the mountain isn't something that tickles me fancy, but it's going to be very, very interesting to watch, to say the very least. And then, of course, on December 9th and 10th, the 24 hours of Zolder to round off the season. With that said, Edward, 50 minutes of racing gone now, just about 10 minutes from the expected first round of pit stops, and yet again, Christophe Urbigno showing that he seems to have a little bit more pace in his Audi than it's the case for Jonathan Poulet, because he's closed that gap right back down. But to quote the good old Murray Walker, it's one thing to catch up and a very other thing getting past a car, and I think it's not the first time, nor is it the last we're going to see this time.
Definitely not. It's going to be just flat out until the end for a lot of these teams. Cooled down in some of the classes, hasn't it, Hassa? But maybe sure that it'll erupt back into life and action. Excited to see where Valkyrie, the 877 car of Roger Christensen, will find itself come the close of this race. Now with a fully repaired car. That was obviously the pole sitter for BLC2. By quite some margin as well, so we know they have good pace. It's just these little incidents that they keep getting wrapped into, which could be their undoing over the course of the season. That was a scary moment there, and it's not going to slow down. Oh, dearie me, and it's so difficult going through that chicane at the best of times, but with the lack of aero that car has, just due to the damage, it makes it all the more difficult. It becomes a hard race, becomes a even harder race for David Van Glabeke, and it was just over the curb actually that unsettled it more than anything else. It was that huge bump, really well just to arrest the momentum, so it wasn't a high-speed impact, and into the soft tyre barriers as well. But David Van Glabeke, after that incident, does come into the pits, so there might have been some suspension damage after that most recent incident.
I was sort of expecting, Edward, that the Firaco car might have been driving the tires a little too heavily at the opening stints of the race, given that it was seeming like everybody else was sort of holding back. But they've been extending throughout this first stint and now into the very final minutes of it, still finding themselves, well, at least not losing any time, it seems. So, chapeau from here on. It's been very good so far. 7 seconds the advantage now. Carlos Diegues thinking, I think at least, more about Jonathan Poulet and Christophe Urbagnot behind him at the moment.
Yeah, it's going to be something to think about, of course, for Carlos Diegues. Obviously, we'll hope that the traffic will help him out, but you can see that, that was, I think the EMW there, Stefan Lehuen, wasn't expecting to see Christophe Urbagnot sliding up his inside as well as Jonathan Poulet, but turns out it was all safe in the end. A little bit sketchy. So as you said, Jonathan Poulet is getting a bit of a shift on in behind Carlos Diegues. They're all, though, losing ground to that Viraco car. The gap has now started to sort of relax at that 6 second mark, but all it takes is for some favourable traffic for Christoph Reis, and then he'll be even further ahead up the road. He might get some here, you know. We'll catch this BLC2 car probably just after the final corner. No, he's actually going to dart up the inside, not wasting any moment. Look at that. Really aggressive move up the inside, but it was committed, and that was the thing. He didn't misjudge his braking point. He darted there, made his intentions incredibly clear, and went for it. And is he going to catch this BLC3 car before turn one? Yes, he is. So he'll have a clear run all throughout the first sector, which is so important for this car because of the downforce. You can carry the momentum through the medium and higher speed corners, much more so than those in behind us. Actually, that is Carlos Diegues into the pits. This is very early indeed. That's not going to make the 1 hour mark at all. And all of a sudden, it's going to be a very difficult race for them. Not even close. We likely to see a splash and dash from them come the end. They're likely, I mean, it'll take a lot of work from Ricardo Ferreira to save the fuel. But that's significant because that could take Arnold's competition completely out of contention for the race victory.
Yeah, that is very true indeed. This one for position on track at the moment as Roger Christiansen is trying to make his way back through the field after that long pit stop they had to take for repairs as well. Can't help but think that it might have been a little bit better to have taken that stop earlier, but what do I know? Oh, not making it there as well on Yuri Crispain. Look at this here. Urbagnot now on the tail of Jonathan Poulet. They would have been spurred on, both of them, by Firac, or not, I'm sorry, not Firaco, but Arnage competition making that pit stop. And ideally here, actually, Edward, Christophe Urbigno wants to probably just hold back a little bit from fighting Jonathan Poulet up ahead too heavily, because it's going to bleed time for both of them that they could be gaining while running lighter against the Anage car. It'll be interesting to see if they will be making the 1 hour mark. And if anything, it will be interesting to hear maybe from the Anage drivers at the end of the race if there was any particular reason, maybe a bit of damage, maybe something holding them up, maybe just some traffic that they would stay clear of.
Look at the train of cars. It's a wonderful sight to see them all dart through that chicane. I want to see how long Veraco can manage out ahead. This was Chris Lauers just up on the inside. And this was pass for on-track position. It was actually coming together. It was not a pass at all. Chris Lauers really squeezed onto the apex there. I'm not sure if that was something that the BLC3 car needed to fight as hard for. Maybe, though, it's another one of those misjudgments of the amount of space being afforded. Could be a racing incident. Obviously, that's one that the stewards will inevitably look at. And these two keep on going, second and third. But they have been dropping back from that Veraco eSports white car, who still leads now by the tune of 9 seconds.
And you would expect them to also still be gaining on Ricardo Ferreira and an Ash competition further back the order now after their pit stop, as well as they're running heavy. They did 38 laps on their opening stint. And I was pretty surprised, I have to say, Edward, to see them coming in that early on, especially given that everybody else has been able to, it seems at least, run the hour with their car. But of course, if they were running a little bit of aero damage, that could have messed up the aerodynamic efficiency of the car to such a degree where it would be affecting their fuel economy as well. I just don't really remember having seen that car looking like it really picked up any sort of scratch there.
Yeah, seems like it for now. Though actually Veraco on that last lap did lose a lot of time by the looks of things. The gap is now 7 seconds.
Yeah, it's a second and a half.
Yeah, it was a second and a half taken out there by Valkyrie, but that was obviously because they had a clear lap. Not really a whole lot of traffic to navigate, I don't think.
Yeah, they did have a pretty clear lap, it seemed to me, and there is a few cars now in between Jonathan Poulet and Christophe Vras. So they would just have been passing by that bit of traffic. Fabrice Cornelis is entering the pit lane just about now as well. So just on the hour mark, more or less, for them, of course, counting the pit stop as well. They'll be out on track in due time. That's going to switch up the order ever so slightly yet again. Babo Fallan is into the pits as well, as Jonathan Poulet is now catching up to that train of cars that have been holding up the Veraco car on the lap before this just ever so slightly. And this time around, they're not going to be all that lucky. Oh, Herbigno heavily held up here.
They're really making this fuel work, though, much more than Arnage competition were. It's getting up to the, going to probably be the about 1 hour and maybe 2 minute mark when we see them come into the pits. That's a lot longer, nearly 6 minutes longer. 7. It's a significant amount of time. They've been able to extend their stints. I have no idea if there was an issue potentially for the number one car, if there was damage that they needed to get repaired, if for whatever reason there needed to be a driver change, something outside of the cockpit. I'm not 100% certain, but whatever the reason, Ricardo Ferreira is now behind the wheel and has a lot of work to do to save the fuel.
Pit time itself hasn't looked that long for them. It was 35 seconds stationary in the pits, and a pit lane time of around a minute. So if it was being repairs, it would have been some minor ones, but of course those can have quite the impact on the performance of the car as well, at least in terms of dropping those final few tenths or half a second here and there, or per lap, you might say. It certainly warrants the pit stop, but I just can't get my head around it really. We've seen Ferreira on decent pace coming out the pits there with a 25.26 on his last lap, so quicker than all of the cars ahead of him, but he would have hadn't gotten the heat into the tires by now as well. Maybe just a bit clearer track. It's always very hard to sort of compare the lap times one to one. You never really know who had a clean lap and who didn't. Christoph Raas, I'm still looking at those 9 seconds down to Jonathan Poulet and Christoph Urbano. A little bit more space in between the two. As the RPM GT car of James Slats is coming into the pits, alongside the BRP, sorry, the number 3 Porsche Cup car of DBRP. Dirk Bouts.
Still going, you know. I'm amazed that they're still actually going out on track in BLC 1. The longer this goes on, the shorter their final stop will be, and the harder the job for our Arnage competition. I mean, looking at the lap times that Ricardo Ferreira is pumping out, they are very quick times. He might be closer, he might be ahead of Christoph Reis after the pit stops, especially if Christoph is going to struggle behind this BLC 3 car. The 912 of Chris van Gucht, the car in 4th place in class, but look at that diving up the inside. No hesitation. A flash of the lights of displeasure, I think, from Chris, but they both worked together to make sure there was no contact.
Well, to be fair, that was pretty fair penalty. I'm just thinking maybe Edward, we've sort of misjudged the situation a little bit as well, because if they can run for 5 minutes over the hour, then running a few minutes under the hour as such, it's not going to be that big of an issue. Now, it could be that they've started a little bit lighter, or it could be that they were just trying to take their short stop as the first of their stops instead of the last as well, and just sort of turning the strategy on their head.
This is something we've seen from our Arnage competition previously, is that they aren't as good on the fuel as those around them. We know for definite that Valkyrie X-Type are some of the best in the business at saving the fuel while still churning out the fast times. But I'm not 100% sure that Arnage will be able to properly make it the full race distance on just one extra stop. I think they will be needing that splash and dash. Obviously, as the race goes on, we'll have a clearer picture. The time set by Ricardo Ferreira, very quick, very competitive. I'm just going to see next time over the line what it will be. If even actually Viraco are going to be coming to the pits next. I think they're coming up to the line fairly soon. So I expect to see them maybe in this lap. They will have done, I believe, 46 racing laps, if my maths is correct. Maybe 45, 46. I think it'll be 46 racing laps. Christoph Reis, is he going to come into the pits? No. Carries on for another one. this is incredibly intriguing just to see how long they're able to make it last on the fuel. Even having some BLC 3 cars coming into the pits before the BLC 1s, which is near enough unheard of. We know that BLC 3 cars can potentially, if you save the fuel, make it on a single stop. But of course, that is not allowed under the regulations. They do have to pit twice and change drivers at each of these stops as a minimum. Nice little move that by Christophe Herbenio up the inside. Sven making that move nice and easy, making sure neither of them lose too much time in that little battle. Bravo by Hoyer time into the bits. Yes, Jarne Biesmans coming to a standstill. Ricardo Ferreira will soon overtake. Cap into fourth place. Jasper Schoenakers behind the wheel of the 42 now. And there goes Ricardo Ferreira into turn 1. Have a look at the lap times again. Another 1 minute 25. Again, lapping around about a second faster than Christoph Reis. Of course, that's partly down to the tyres. They are fresher in the number 1 car. Squirrely moments like that aren't going to be too comforting for Ricardo at this present moment in time. As Christoph Reis does come into the pits. Valkyrie Excite competition carry on, as do Boutsen VDS by Undercut Red. So, where will Veraco eSports White find themselves after this pit stop? Car will stop in the box and go onto the jacks, changing tyres and putting a full tank of fuel on board, you would imagine. And inheriting the race lead is Jonathan Poulet and Valkyrie Excite competition. They know what their main goal is for this evening, and that is to finish ahead of Arnage Competition GT3 for their championship fight. They could potentially afford to take their eyes off of Veraco eSports White just due to their lower position in the standings, but still plenty of time for them to be a bit of a dark horse over the course of the evening. Now we should see Mathieu Soufi get up and running, and the car does start rolling, but like we predicted, Ricardo Ferreira does go ahead. The lap times by that Arnage Competition GT3 straight out of the box were very quick indeed. And it's going to be by some distance as well, actually. He will be out in front. Not into the lead necessarily, but after the pit stops, you would imagine will be leading proceedings here this evening.
I think it will be. And what they could have been doing on that stop, that does seem pretty clever when looking at the stop times. Overall, they had 9 seconds less in the pits than Veraco as Boutsen VDS comes in. And it is true what you said, Edward. Jonathan Poulet and Valkyrie Excite competition squeezing that extra lap out of the car. But it'll be interesting to see just how long the other cars spend in the pits, and if Matty Soufi's going to do an hour and 10 minutes here as well, that's going to make a much shorter final stint. So it might just be swinging yet again later on, the good old pendulum of luck. But so far, it's been a good opening stop and opening part of his stint as well for Ricardo Ferreira. Now just jumping the Boutsen VDS by undercut car. There's Jeremy Ponsodo leaving the pit lane. And that is going to be... oh, it's going to be very close with Mehdi Soufi, but I think... well, I think doesn't really matter. I was about to say, I think it's going to be enough to stay ahead. It very much wasn't the case here. And as we say that, Jonathan Poulet, I think, last of the BLC 1's cars to come in. At the same time, we've had our leaders coming in. There we are. The Arnage Competition pink car, the number 12 machine, being taken over by Manuel Troncoso. With that, we have Chris Lowers now having inherited the race lead. So it's, at the moment, a ART Sim Racing 1-2 with the 11 leading the 12. And BLC 2, of course, they will have to take their pit stops in a short amount of time as well. As we say that, it's the pit stop and driver change for the overall leader, the 677, finally in an hour and 11 minutes at what might be the longest stint I've ever seen anyone do in a GT3.
Yeah, very long indeed. It's a circuit that obviously lends itself to the fuel saving. Ricardo Ferreira now carving his way through turn number 2. And let's have a look. Brice Mingouet, who is, I think, a newcomer to the virtual Belcar. Not seen him behind the wheel of that Lamborghini. So we'll see what Bryce can manage, what his pace is like, because we know that that car has a very strong driver lineup. And actually, they have come out ahead with Mathieu Soufi. So they spent a long time in the pits, that 14 car. They lost quite a bit of time as well, actually. Pit time for Mathieu Soufi was 43 seconds in comparison to most of the other cars that are at 35, 34. So was there potentially a penalty at play there? Did they maybe overshoot their pit box and had to reverse? Very interesting, because they've
maybe
had
just
by
taking
far the longest stop out of all of the other BLC1 runners.
They might have just taken on more fuel. That's what I'm thinking.
Maybe repairs.
It could have. Yeah, could have been repairs. Could have been taking on more fuel as well. In the end, it's hard to say. I think we're gonna get the answer come the end of this stint. If they're gonna be able to run for those extra laps and in turn have a shorter final pit stop, then we'll know why. But it'll be interesting to see, and it certainly keeps this BLC1 battle wide open as Ricardo Ferreira in an Ash competition now leads it, the number 1 car, with 5.5 seconds down to Brice Mingouet in the Valkyrie X-Type composition 677 machine. Then Mathieu Soufi for Firaco ahead of Jeremy Bonsodo in the Boutsen VDS by Undercut machine. The Bravo by Time is in 5th place in BLC1. That's the 42 car driven by Jasper Schoenakers. David from Slambrook is for Rata Racing Panda, 6th at the moment in BLC1, with Ward Mileage for Sim Formula Europe 7th, and Jeroen Diekman for Sim Racing BE by ROI Management in 8th at the moment. Guus Franken is a fair way down the order in the RPM GT machines, but they are 9th at the moment in BLC1. BLC2 sees both of the ART Sim Racing cars coming into the pits. That is most likely to leave the only car in BLC2 that is yet to pit. And we have him, Brab Charlie by Actimo, the 81 car, driven by Sibo Barrett-Brooks at the moment. But the virtual leader, dare I say, is the number 10 car. But is it going to stay like this full on? That was a very sketchy moment, Edward. And involving the 33 Lambo here as well, just being held up for quite a bit as the number 10 machine does make it through on the number 3. The BPRP driven by Dirk Bouts. A little bit of a sketchy moment, but these are still, I would imagine, the virtual leaders. 40 seconds. It's going to be easily taken with a pit stop. And then we're, of course, looking to the 877 over the course of the race to see how much they're going to be able to claw back. Been an interesting development, though, in BLC1 here now with Mathieu Soufi behind the wheel of the Firaco eSports white car, and Jeremy Bonsodo getting close now, just within half a second here.
Jeremy Bonsodo up behind Mathieu Soufi. This Boutsen VDS by Undercut Red has been very quick, it's fair to say, in terms of pace it's had, keeping up with likes of Jonathan Poulet for a majority of the race. It is actually Mathieu Soufi struggling just a little bit at the apex there, not quite acclimatized to the car, and Jeremy Bonsodo is going to take full advantage of that little error down in towards turn 1. Not the biggest of braking zones. They will go side by side, trying to fight it around the outside to then get the inside. It's going to be a tight squeeze, but they make it work. Well defended there. The 14 of Matthew Sufi, Veraco eSports White, hanging on to that third position, but fighting back, looking up the inside and braking very late, covering his way through and overshooting massive is Jeremy Bonsoro. It looked like he'd got it done just about, but carried far too much speed at the apex and is going to drop several seconds back now. But that was great awareness by Matthew Sufi to turn out of that one and just to let it happen, because it could have been so easy for Matthew to turn in and try and block off that avenue up the inside and have them result in a crash.
A bit of a disastrous moment for the 17 car here, the Boutsen VDS by undercut. Been looking very competitive over the opening stint. This is time that they can't really afford to lose. That with 8 seconds lost on that little trip out, botanizing the gravel fields there. It's something, Edward, that I think you wouldn't necessarily see on a track that has been on the service for a number of years and that that everybody is well familiar with. But these new tracks, and especially when it's a track like Oschersleben, that isn't really something that we've seen throughout a huge number of racing sims. There's been a lot of learning to do for a lot of the drivers, I think, and that could be part of the explanation to some, at least just some of the hiccups that we've seen throughout this this race here. But that said, Edward, we're also getting closer to the halfway point of this race. And when we do get to there, we're going to take a short 5-minute break. That's in about 12 minutes time from now. And I have to say, I think this opening half of the race has absolutely flown by.
Yeah, but like you were saying earlier, we've seen a few hiccups, but thankfully none too severe. None that the stewards have had to get involved with, thankfully, which is always a good day when the stewards haven't been too busy. So that actually is, I think, we have seen a black flag come through for the, I think, Valkyrie Excite GT4 card, 777 for an incident. Not sure what that could have been, but I've just seen that appear. So we'll obviously find out in due course what that incident was for. But barring that, it's been relatively clear and clean in terms of driving standards. Sure, we've had a few racing incidents here and there, but I think it's understandable given the time off that the drivers have had. A little bit rusty and needing to get more familiar with circuit and the multi-class nature of the virtual Belcar. There aren't really many official series like it, which is what makes it such an entertaining spectacle to watch. Race Minuet still around about 5 seconds back from Ricardo Ferreira. Last time by there was 7/10 taken out of Ricardo's lead for an Arch competition. Let's not forget though as well, Ferreira is running a lighter car than Bryce at this moment in time after pitting, well, several laps earlier. It's about, looking at when they came into the pits, it's 11 laps, Passer. That's a huge amount.
And exactly that. I think it might actually be enough that it's more of an advantage, even with the lighter car, in favor of
And the traffic's really worked against them, though. Traffic's really hurt them, because look at the time now when they're going to come across the line. Look at the differential in that time, because it's going to be nearly a full second taken out.
Yeah, it's going to be
back
more
over
than
it. Second and a half.
Exactly. It's quite a lot. And Brisminge's tires are 11 laps younger as well. So Brisminge, I think, will be with the car that's maybe just feeling that little bit fresher throughout this stint. Interestingly, though, that they sort of just mirrored the pip time of Arnage in terms of how much fuel they put in. So they probably didn't put in a full tank. You would expect maybe just to split the final 2 stints up in 2 equal blocks and to just fuel that a little bit less for both of the pit stops. That might just be the strategy they're gunning for, but certainly it's one of the more open races in terms of strategy. There's been more leeway than we usually see, and more sort of space to maneuver around for the teams in terms of the fuel strategy, at least in BLC 1. So far, it's made it quite interesting here. Ricardo Ferreira, by the way, 11.3 seconds clear of Matty Sufi. His last lap was a 1:28.5. Just falling ever so slightly off of the pace. Not by much, but just by enough. That could be down to the traffic here, but it's just by enough that the gap is beginning to open up a little bit.
I think we did see that Verarco car encounter a little bit of traffic on the last lap. You can see those BLC 2 cars in the background that likely had to navigate around. There's with a BLC 1 car to try and get past. That is the, I think 20, is that the, let's have a look, is that the 33 of Goose Franken? Trying to think for Bryce Mingwei.
I think that is, yeah. It is.
It's just actually struggling a little bit there is Bryce Mingwei. Did he have a slowdown potentially? It looked like he was well off the pace there.
That looked a little bit strange. That's very, very true. We're just gonna go on board with him here for a moment.
Close this down. Go there. Let's through this left-hander. Just comes through. Ooh, a big bit of a moment there. The car going very out of shape and just had to really slow it down and came incredibly close to a moment there. So it was not a slowdown. It was just, well, it was more slowing the car down to avoid a big incident. And that was really well held by Bryce, because at that speed, when the car is that fully loaded up on the sort of right-hand side tyres, if you get any sort of snap, especially in the Audi, it's incredibly hard to recover. So that was very well done. Good car control. Obviously not what he wants in terms of the race pace of this car, and the average lap time is not where he wants it to be. Still, it was necessary evil when you consider how badly that could have gone.
Yeah, very much so. That could have been an absolute disaster. And it's getting attritional here. If nothing else, just by the ability to run these high-pace laps consistently at the front of the BLC 1 field. It's turning now ever so slightly in the advantage of Ricardo Ferreira and Anaj's competition, who for this sense seems to be the coolest cucumber in the greens department. I was about to say. I think you get the drift here. Brice Minguet, though, still doing a good job, but he's 6.5 seconds down now. A very spicy lap from Ricardo Ferreira coming in there at 25.31, so half a second quicker on that last lap than Minguet as well. And then Matty Sufi and at 27.1 on his last lap. Let's see what this one's going to be. It's going to be a 27.1. Again, basically the same lap done twice there. It's going to help him no more, though, in terms of catching the opposition up ahead. And then Jeremy Bonzado, who has had a bit of a moment here that I think we missed, Edward. Last time we saw him, he was about 4 seconds off of Matty Sufi. And then this happened.
Well, again, it's just that corner. This time not battling. It's just a self-inflicted mistake.
It's
ooh, and careful of the rejoin. Ooh, that was dangerous, to say the least. That puts him behind some traffic that he'd rather not be behind. Obviously, he's gotten ahead of them since then. But, oof, Benek, that was worrying for Jean Bonsedo. And could be a sign of maybe something issue with the car, as Gerard Swinnen. Ooh, rejoins the track. It's so easy. Second moment when it gets back onto the sticky black stuff, onto the tarmac, but well held. Circuit that seems to be catching out a lot of drivers, though, doesn't it? They're pushing a little bit too hard and running wide off into the grass.
Yeah, true that, and it is also a mistake that is also easy to make it when it's especially trying to come onto the throttle as early as possible, entering the slower corners, and just finding the car washing wide. It is it's a dreaded thing. It's a terrible thing to have happening for you as a driver as well, because it feels so inefficient when a car, if it's just washing off whenever you try to put down the throttle. And it has the tendency to really wear down the front tires as well quickly, meaning that the more you do it, the worse it's going to be. So normally you'd say you'd really be looking for a setup well balanced. Oh, and there it goes wrong for Jeremy Bonsodo. We were talking about it. Might have just overcooked his tires. He's taken a spin and now he's waiting to rejoin. I think it looks pretty safe to me, that one. To just let a few cars pass on through. Now it's the DBRP Porsche in behind. But another moment for Jeremy Bonsodo, and the podium chances for Boutsen VDS by undercut. Of course, a lot could still happen. But by the looks of it, slowly slipping away here, Edward. Anyway, back with the leader, Ricardo Ferreira.
Sorry, chat. Oh, I had my mic muted. Whoopsie daisy. I was just about to say that it was a crying shame, really, because that car was on for a very good result, potentially with a podium on the cards. And then it's just become undone. It's not something that I think Jeremy needs to feel too hard about. Sometimes just when you're pushing hard, maybe just overdriving the car a little bit, these little mistakes can happen. Sure, they feel like a lot when you're behind the wheel, but at the end of the day, he's still in a very good position. A fourth place is looking nearly sealed, and I think, having a look, that would be one of their best results of the season, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, definitely so. And they have had pace on so many situations, just finding themselves out of luck as well on a few of those. Matti Sufi now 14 seconds down on Brice Minke and the Valkyrie car ahead of him. 22.5 seconds down on our race leader, Ricardo Ferreira, who just posted a 25.18. So that's more than a second and a half gained on Brice Minke in the shape of that one lap alone. And this might be also just the Anash car getting into the zone where it's beginning to really quicken up. But I'm still intrigued to see what things are going to look like at the end of the next round of pit stops, and just when these different teams are going to be taking it. I think it's going to be a little bit more on the boards for BLC 1 than it is for BLC 2 and BLC 3 at the moment. With that said, though, Roger Christiansen is doing a brilliant job of bringing the 877 car back into race contention here. They're not much more than 10 seconds off. And by the way, it is still Koen Klopman and Ash competition 100. The Eau Rouge car, the BMW, that's leading from Stefan Verhofstadt, and the championship leading Traxxas by JWS Classic Cars. That's the number 6 GT4 Mercedes. And then third in BLC 3 is Symbol.be Rapid, and the 114 car of Michael Holsters. And with that said, Edward and I are going to take a short break of just about 5 minutes or so, and we're going to leave you with the beautiful sound of the Audi V10 that rests as the heart of the Lamborghini. And the Ricardo Ferreira, she's held up in traffic. Probably going to be a pretty interesting ride for these minutes. Anyway, don't go anywhere unless you have the same business as Edward and I of just stretching the legs and picking up snacks. We'll see you very soon again. Oh, hello, ladies and gents. We are back for the final half of the fourth round of virtual Belcar racing here from the 2023 season. And the first visit to Motorsport Arena Oschersleben. Ricardo Ferreira still leads, around 11 seconds ahead of Brice Minguet, and then Madi Soufi, around half a minute off of the leader. And we've had a little bit of drama while we've been away here for Michael Holsters in the 114, getting tapped by the class-leading Anash Pink car, who had their final warning already. Then Gregory De Veert in the 999, entering way too quickly, taking a bit of a trip to the grass, but managing to rejoin somewhat safely. And then Hendrik de Grave, under no fault of mine, I would say, in the 876, and a heavy impact. I probably shouldn't have made fun of that. It didn't look that serious, but that is a wrecked car, I'm afraid, for the Ferraco eSports black team. And they're going to be in some serious trouble, I'm afraid, from there on. They jump to the pits, and that might just be the end of their race as well. So heartbreak on the account of Hendrik de Grave. Back with the overall leaders here, Ricardo Ferreira. And now a battle as well, as Ward Mallards is on the tail of David van Slambrook in the Rata Racing Panda car. And I think, Edward, if you're with me here, this is
I am.
an Audi R8 that, to say the very least, has seen better times.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It's a shame as well, because that Rata Racing Panda car is a very nice looking machine, but sadly, not with the front end as battered and bruised as it is looking right now. The gaggle of cars, they're all having to try and get around. And we're just covering their way through all three classes on our screens. BLC2, BLC1, another BLC1, another BLC1, just bringing up the rear, that BLC3 car waiting in the wings. Action-packed first 1 hour and 40 minutes. So we've got 1 hour and 20 still to go. And it's one that currently sees Arnage Competition in the lead of the race, extending their advantage to Valkyrie Except Competition. But there is that question mark over the strategy for Arnage and if they will need to make the splash and dash pit stop or not. Ricardo Ferreira obviously needs to do some sort of fuel-saving wizardry to make it last, considering they pitted 11 laps sooner than their nearest rivals in second place, coming in on lap 38, whereas Brice Minguet and Valkyrie came in on lap 49. So there's a big discrepancy there that we'll have to keep our eyes on as the race evolves and progresses. At the very least, what that will mean is even if that number one car can make it on just one more stop, that will be a significantly longer stop than the Valkyrie car in behind. You will imagine they'll probably be able to shave off maybe 10, maybe even 15 seconds off of their pit time. Then we have the BLC2 class, which we have currently third place coming into the pits. That's Jo Vergaard Godestad, the 877 Valkyrie Except car, and they've had a good charge back up the field following their early incident at the very first lap, coming in towards turn number 4. It was one that saw several cars get stricken. They were probably one of the most affected, obviously getting struck down from pole in BLC2. There's some work to do, it's fair to say, but there's still time to go in this race. Maybe some fuel saving needed. They can make the stints last around about 1 hour 15 in the BLC2 maybe 1 hour 20 at push, so it will need to be save up until the very end.
But an interesting perspective, after all, that it could be possible for the Valkyrie X-Type 877 Porsche there in the BLC2 class to actually contend for the podium places, given that they were quite a way off with their earlier pit stop and the damage that they did have to repair on that pit stop. But now I think the door might just be open for Ward Mallets, although he's on the outside of David van Slabroek. And it stays that way, but he'll have a better run onto the start-finish straight if he can just line it up. But he doesn't seem to be able to really manage that. Just sort of misses the cutback there. And has a look, but no more than that. And it's gonna be another few moments, at the very least, of frustration there for Ward Mallets. And at this point, Edward, I think we can safely say, at least, that for now, the race has quietened down ever so slightly. As we're coming into the final hour, this is also where we love to see it. Some life blown back up into it, especially within the final half an hour or so. And I'm having a sneaking suspicion that with the small discrepancies in strategy in BLC 1, we haven't seen the last of that lead fight. With 11 seconds separating the two leaders, it's certainly way too close to call at this moment. 20 seconds, by the way, is the gap from Manuel Troncoso to Laurent Stade in the ART Sim Racing BLC 2 machine. And just looking at the gap there from Koen Klopman, it's about half a minute down to Stefan Verhofstadt. And another half a minute or so to Michael Holsters, who did have a bit of an incident a few laps ago, and I don't know just how their car is doing. Let's see if we can maybe get a little bit wiser to that, as someone is off. That's Jorrit Svinen here, Edward. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about what happened to them.
Let's have a look here. Jorrit Svinen just overshooting in turn 2. Thankfully, the gravel track actually does slow down the momentum quite a bit. And then they're able to rejoin back onto the circuit. Nice and safely done. Not to interfere with the cars going by. So that was nicely done there. Exactly how the driver should be rejoining on the circuit. And that's going to be something that stewards will be very glad to see. They don't need to get involved with that one.
With the battle for 6th position here, it's still David van Slambroek, keeping his stricken Audi ahead of Ward Mallets in the Sim Formula Europe Audi. That car seems to be in pretty decent nick, to me at least. But really being held up through the traffic here and defending heavily as well. Makes it difficult for Ward Mallets to get anything done here. As I said about a lap ago, looks to be another lap of frustration for Ward Mallets. 0.8 of a second. Yes, there's a mistake here coming into turn 2. And David van Slambroek seems fairly consistent with his lines at the moment. Maybe just trying to hold on till the pit stop rounds. Maybe hoping to be able to bleed some of the repairs off. Lord knows, maybe just enough to get a new front fender on the car. New front bonnet. Ricardo Ferreira getting held up here behind the Brab number 9 BLC2 Porsche. And in BLC 3 is the 100 Anage car, having done a brilliant job so far. They're about to lap the sister Anage BLC 3 BMW, the 101 car. And is currently sitting in 5th place. And as mentioned not too long ago, the gaps in BLC are quite considerable, and maybe a little bit of a surprise here, but we've seen so many close battles taking place in BLC 3, so not quite the class where we're used to things going on an early lockout such as this, as Ward Mallets this time around might just find himself getting past. And I think he's going to get it done this time around because there isn't too much grip there on the outside for David van Slambrook to enjoy. Although he does get a decent cutback run, and this could be a send on the inside. Oh, he thinks better of it. Ward Mallets takes over that 6th place, at least for now.
Yeah, I mean, that racing Panda car, it's just struggles so much in a straight line. You can see just the acceleration, and when it gets towards the higher end of the power band, it really just struggles. It's suffering just due to the extra drag from the front end damage. It's also struggling a little bit on turning because it doesn't have the same aero performance of the Sim Formula Europe car. It's just going to be so difficult. You can just see not with the same legs, and it's really struggling to get past this BLC2 car. Having to be very late and opportunistic on the brakes, which actually does force that BLC2 car slightly off kilter. Meanwhile, I think we'll have to look for the Arnage Competition GT3 car when they're going to be coming into the pits next, because they came in fairly early, and maybe within the next 5, maybe 10 minutes, we'll see them into the pits. I'll be surprised if they make it to the 2-hour mark, that's for certain.
Surely this is going to be one of the big interesting moments to follow. Whether it's going to be any sort of gains for Valkyrie's X-Type competition. Sorry, over this next pit stop. But so far it's been gains on gains for Ricardo Ferreira and an Ash competition, who's gained, I think, 7 or 8 seconds over the course of this stint so far on the Valkyrie car. Gained quite a lot of time on Firaco and even more on the Boots and VDS by Undercut. So it's been a very good stint for Ricardo Ferreira on the number 1 Anash competition GT3 machine. But indeed, Edward, the lap count, lap 76 here. So at the very least, a bit of a longer stretch here on the second stint than what they did on the first. And we'll be expecting them to come in before long. But with the amount of stretching we saw from some of the other teams, it wouldn't put it past them to be able to run to the 2-hour mark. And if that's the case,
Eventually.
It'd be interesting also to see how much further the other teams in BLC 1 are going to extend them.
Yeah, I can see what you mean by that. It's just, like I was saying earlier, Arnage have not necessarily been the most notable in terms of saving rules. Always Valkyrie that seem to be the ones to go that extra mile, and they were actually the team that did come in the latest of all of the runners in BLC 1.
But we would also expect, if Valkyrie do the same on this stint, we would expect them to stay out for, what, another half an hour or so, right? So
Could do. Quite, and maybe not half an hour, but potentially...
something,
actually, you know what, maybe actually. Somewhere in that realm. So.
Something close to it, right? So that would make it a very, very short final stint. Also a much shorter final stop than what we expect Anash to have to do. So, as mentioned before,
Definitely.
Edward, we've spoken about this. This might not be over yet. Just have to see.
Absolutely, yes. It's still all to play for. They haven't put all of the cards on the tables. They're just starting to show their hand a little. And this is when the drivers can maybe tweak their strategies in response to what those around them are doing. Good lap time there by the Traxxas by JWS Classic Cars in BLC 3. The number 6 of Stefan Verhoeft with the fastest lap of that class so far. Lovely livery as always for the number 6 car. And they're trying to close down on Koen Klopman. Koen currently has a rather healthy advantage. That number 100 Arnage competition Eau Rouge entry. Quick as ever, that BMW. While it isn't necessarily the first track I would think of when I think of a strong BMW circuit, it's certainly going very nicely around here.
We did also see quite a bit of chaos kick things off for the BLC 3 class, having that massive incident on the first lap, let's say shaking things up at the very least. But it is true that expect the Mercedes to be a bit stronger than the BMW on a track like this. We have seen the number 6 Traxxas by JWS Classic Cars Mercedes here be quite strong as well. But they just haven't been able to fight back to the consistent level that is the 100 BMW's trademark in that Arnage Competition Eau Rouge team that has won so much, the pairing of Fabrice Cornelis and Koen Klubman. I think fair to say, Edward, after so many seasons now, always fighting at the very spicy end of things, safe to say that they are indeed a bit of a legendary pairing in the realms of virtual Belcar racing. And I think if you were to put all of the wins together, probably the winningest duo that we have in the field. So really no surprises to see them where they are battling for yet another win to put in the trophy case. Comes Ferreira through on, that is the ART Sim Racing number 11 BLC2 car. Currently in second place in class. Still, it's been a very good race as well for ART. With 2 cars on the podium, Edward, and BLC2, they will probably be happy with that if it stays like this for an hour and 5 minutes.
Definitely. They're getting close to the all-important 2-hour mark, so they're certainly maybe salvaging the race from the short stint that was done earlier, or maybe that was the plan all along, is have a short early stint and then obviously get that track position in front and build on it lap after lap after lap. And it's certainly been what Ricardo Ferreira has done, put him in on this middle stint, and he's mastered the traffic brilliantly. Well, come to Glenn Hopkins, the Brabant Charlie by Actimo Machine, and it's a car we haven't seen too much of this race, have we, Husser? It's sort of flown under the radar. Be some good points on the board, very respectable 5th place.
Yeah, and in a race like this, often this is exactly what you want to do, basically. If you don't attract much attention to yourself, it means you've done a fairly uneventful race, and well, that might always be the most interesting thing to be a part of as a driver or to watch. It is often one of the best ways to get through, especially these relatively atrocious endurance events at a track that's both relatively tight, relatively technical, and pretty unknown for a majority of the drivers, I would expect. It's been a good performance so far from the 81. And Glenn Hopkins, as I'm looking at it, they've been in twice already, so no, sorry, they've been in once, so still a pit stop to go for them as well.
You can see the straight line speed difference, BLC2 cars and the BLC3 at the very top end of the power band. That Porsche is actually funnily enough faster than BLC1 cars when they get up and running. Obviously the straights here aren't quite long enough for that to be made apparent. The acceleration of the BLC1 cars is just so much that it counteracts that top end. Jeremy Devova at the moment, who we're on board with for DBR. Currently chasing down DBRP up ahead. Let's see if there's going to be some battling or if we might see maybe some team games at play inverting the position. What do you think, Hasse?
I hadn't even figured out that these two were sort of sister cars because the liveries are so well inverted that you have to sort of think about the fact that they're even related. But once you see it, you've seen it, and it's actually quite spectacular. I really like the variety and the diversity of color in these two liveries, and the difference of tone and sort of mood as well.
DBR is certainly the Belgian one.
You got a crazy and eccentric team of drivers in the purple and teal car and stuff. You got a focused set of fast drivers in the red, yellow, and black one. I don't know if that's the truth at all, but it gives some kind of impression like that.
Yeah, definitely.
From an artist's mind,
very artistic of you.
A good little battle that's brewing here.
Hang about here, Hasse. Viraco eSports White into the pits.
Okay,
this is earlier than we're expecting them to come in, but maybe it's to hand over to Matthew Christopher Rice, who was so good earlier on. So maybe they're giving him more seat time to see if he can close down the gap to the cars ahead.
I think this must be it, and then try to do the shortest possible stop for this pit stop as well. And you can see they're now off the jacks. They have been in for 30 seconds now, so they'll be off and running fairly soon. Surprising to see them first in, 33.6 seconds. That is a very, very quick pit stop, so they'll be hoping to gain some back on the leaders with that. Interesting to see how long Ricardo Ferreira and the Anage Composition GT3 machine will have to be stationary. Same with, of course, Valkyrie and the Boots and VDS by undercar up ahead. Jasper Schoenackers there in the 42. I have to say again, done a very good job this race, flying under the radar as well. And I say that in the most positive of senses, because it's definitely not an easy thing to do at a track like this. The 42 car showing us the true meaning of racing. Just keeping a cool head and keeping the car alive to pick up whatever points will be there for you at the end. And fourth place here so far for Bravo by area time is a very fine result to be sitting with. Let's see how they will be faring on in a short hour's time. And that short hour's time, of course, implies the fact that we have indeed moved into the final hour of racing here from Oschersleben. So 2/3 of this race now done and dusted for. This is going to be the final sprint to the line. We're going to be all the wiser in just a few minutes, Edward, on how that BLC1 strategy palette is gonna play out here.
Yeah, I mean, Anage Competition have carried on going, and the longer they go, the better it looks for them with their 15-second lead over Valkyrie Excite Competition. Boots and VDS by undercut red. They're in third place. That looks to be an almost nailed-on position for them as well. Although it might come down to potentially pit strategies versus the Viraco eSports white car that I think is probably their nearest contender for that position. Oh, Jasper corner. Again, it's so easily done, just misjudging it slightly, tapping a wheel onto the gravel. You can see the car instantly snaps away. The difference in traction, that wheel on the gravel spins him around. Look at that, instantly just goes the front end, it grips up the rear end, slides around. Thankfully, it gets onto the brakes and avoids the barriers, but that loses a huge amount of time for the Bravo car. Now, Valkyrie Excite just ahead of Ward Mellart's there, and that car is one to keep an eye on because they've basically done their final stop, whereas the cars ahead are yet to pit. So it's intriguing to see. They're likely to get onto the podium just based on the amount of pace they have beneath their wings and the fact that ART Sim Racing, the car that I think is only 5 seconds up the road, will need to pit again. So it's definitely going to be a step of the podium for Valkyrie X-Up 877. It's just going to be a question of which step, and if they've been able to snatch victory from what looked to be the jaws of defeat at the earlier phase of the race. Now, Valkyrie X-Up competition coming in before Arnage. This is interesting. Is this potentially the plan to get Jonathan Poulet into the car earlier and give him more track time as well?
Might very well just be the case here. We'll be looking at the pit time as well. That's a 37.6, exactly the same as Boutsen's first stop. They'll now be out a little bit longer than their first one, and that leads me to believe, as we see Ricardo Ferreira come in, Edward, they might be in for a full stop here, or at least a little bit more fuel to do than the other cars around them. So it's going to be interesting. It's all playing out here. 55 minutes left of the race to roll. We're going to stay on the pit cam here for a moment just to see how this pit stop plays out for the number 1 car.
Yeah, large competition. Pitting and stopping in their box, swapping drivers over. So Carlos Duegues takes over from Ricardo Ferreira. PLC 3 strikes us by JWS Classic Cars leading still and extending their advantage. You can see the purple lap time that's just been set by them in their defense of first position. It's looking very much their own moment, but of course they do need to pit again, whereas I believe Fabrice Cornelis does not, so might not necessarily be all their own, as Carlos Rodriguez comes out in behind Jeremy Bonsuaro. We expected that car needs to pit, the Boutsen VDS by undercut red. However, Jonathan Poulet is only just going to come around the final corner, and this is the final pit stops all sorted out, and that gap remains at 15 seconds. That's been a brilliant stint by Ricardo Ferreira to not only extend the fuel from the pit stop of Carlos Duegues earlier on, but also to keep the lap times quick and actually extend the lead. Really great job there by Ricardo. And now we'll see if they can hang on to the end, or if traffic will maybe allow Jonathan Poulet to catch up. Still some time to go in this race. About 54 minutes there on thereabouts at the Oschersleben circuit, the first time here, and it's certainly thrown up a few surprises, not the least in the strategy, because I have no idea how a large competition were able to make that one work.
No, it's a very good question. I think they pitted early and still with fuel in the car, presumably I think because they could see that there was an area of course I don't know this, but I would expect it to maybe have something to do with an area of the track that might have been clear for traffic, where they could see, okay, here we have maybe 4, 5, 6 laps that we can do clean, get ahead of the competition, and then work the gap from there over the second stint. Whatever the strategy has been for the Arnage competition cars so far, it's worked out brilliantly. Jeremy Bonsuaro here, and an 18-second advantage before his final pit stop. Not going to be a chance really that's going to hold off. But it's 13 seconds now from Carlos Duegues to Jonathan Poulet. Of course, we'll need to see Jesper Schoenakers and the Bravo by Airtime car, the 42, into the pits as well shortly. That's going to promote Christoph Raas up the order at least a little bit. Looking at the times as well here, there is actually a pretty decent chance that Christoph Raas is indeed going to rejoin ahead of Jeremy Bonsuaro as well, meaning that virtually, I think at least, will be sitting in third place. Saying that, Bonsuaro comes into the pits now. This could be the shortest stop for any of the BLC1 runners. Just about 50 minutes of racing left on the clock here. It's been an interesting night. Certainly an interesting way, I would say, to have any sort of as a relationship opener with Oschersleben, a track that does indeed lend itself to some good racing, but also a track of a relatively high skill ceiling, as we've seen. Not an easy track to handle the traffic on, Edward.
Definitely not. It's one where the drivers really need to be switched on for the whole race distance, and we've seen a few mistakes creeping in here and there. At the moment, though, it's all nice and calm out on the circuit as the drivers are making their final pit stops. Here we go, Christoph Herbignoc coming back onto the circuit. This will be into 5th place, just behind Christoph Reis. And then obviously Jasper Schoenackers in that number 42 Lamborghini, another car we expect to see into the pits, and that would then promote Christoph Reis back up into the podium places, which will be just reward for their efforts so far this race. That Ferrari eSports white car had been one of the stories of the race from their earlier position, leading and pulling away for a brief period by Arnage competition. But then that long time spent in the pits was, I think, what really undid them, spending 10 seconds longer than their main rivals. Just hurt them quite badly. Seems to be the case, at least. Not sure if it was just an overshoot the pit box or if they were just repairing damage, but at the end of the day, it was not what they needed or wanted whatsoever. Here we go as well. Jo Vergaard Godestad in the Valkyrie X-Type BLC2 car. I think chasing down this car here that we've just seen get overtaken, the 12 of ART Sim Racing 2. And this is for the podium positions. It is a position that will be essentially gifted to the 877 car when the pit stops come through. But you know that they would want this to be made on track rather than in the pits with a good run. Oh, look at that, a huge snap there, well held. Just shows how feisty these Porsche Cup cars are. No traction control or ABS means you will have moments like that on more than a few occasions over the course of a 3-hour race distance.
Yeah, and it's so easy to overwork the tires, both on being aggressive on the throttle and getting a bit of wheel spin, but also on locking the tires at the lack of the ABS systems that so many other race cars nowadays do have, especially, of course, noteworthily the GT3 machines of BLC1. But this seems to be a done deal for me, Edward. The ART Sim Racing 2 machine, the number 12 car there, is going to get the send done upon from Jo Vegard Godestad. Oh. Looks like he's having a good time at the moment in his Porsche. Certainly a car that does divide the waters. It divides opinions, and it's a car you seem to either love or hate. It's rare that I heard someone don't really have an opinion on the Porsche Cup car. It's a sort of the game 50 Cent G-Unit thing, whatever that song. Hate it or love it. Hate it or love it. The Porsche Cups on top. I don't know. Unless, except for the fact that it maybe is.
We are just watching as well, as just to try and move along from whatever on earth that was, is Lawrence Stard, the number 11 car, the ART Sim Racing BLC2 class car, is currently in the pits, and we'll be waiting to see if Jo Vergaard Godestad is able to come through past. We'll have a look. They do tend to spend quite a while into the pits, expecting that car to be stationary for about another 30 seconds. So it might be closer for second place. And if not, the pace of that Valkyrie car is mighty quick indeed. Could be right up behind them before too long. Comes down off of the jack, still needs a bit more fuel on board. Arnage Competition Pink now enters the pit lane from the lead of the BLC2 class. Manuel Troncoso going by. as Jo Vegard Godestad drives on up into second place ahead of Chris Lavers, who is now coming onto the circuit. So that is good stuff for the BLC2 Valkyrie machine. The 877 back up into second place and almost up into first. We'll see now where number 10 car comes, the class leading BLC2 car, because that could be all important in the closing moments of this race as to where they'll find themselves. It's fair to say, isn't it, Hassa, that the Valkyrie X-Type 877 car has been the quickest car in its class out on circuit, but of course our large competition should have a healthy lead going into these final 45 minutes.
Yeah, definitely so. It's been a good display of determined fight back from the 877, I have to say. Wasn't necessarily expecting them to make it that far up in terms of their early, to say the very least, poor luck in this race. But a strong fight back it's been. And now what really remains to be seen is whether they can keep the car running to the checkered flag. Mind you, they did have their final pit stop a little bit early, so that might be a little bit on the line for the Valkyrie X-Type BLT2 car there, Edwin.
Could be, as Boots and VDS by Undercut Red set the fastest lap of the race in BLC 1. Very nice lap time there, and they're chasing down third place for Arco eSports White. This could be a bit of a revelation in these last few moments if we're to see a battle for the final step of the podium. BLC 3 as well, hotting up for, I believe that to be, is that second place? Yes, it is. Our large competition, Eau Rouge, battling away with SimWorld BE Rapid. I think it's fair to say that Michael Olsters is needing to pit a second time, so while it's an on-track battle, it, in the grand scheme of things, will not be the case come the end of proceedings. Again, it's not going to be helping out Fabrice Gonales in any way, shape or form. Oh, a little look to the inside. Cheeky. It forces Michael Olsters to take a compromised line out of the corner, but will be holding the inside. And I think actually, yeah, backing off, letting Fabrice Cornelis through, realizes that it's not really a fight worth having. Instead, slots back in, knowing that he'll need to make another pit stop before the end. Now, Valkyrie X-Type 877, 30 seconds back from our large competition pink. That's going to be a big ask to try and make up, while also having to save fuel. They did come in fairly early on, and it could be a tricky job to make the fuel last up until the end. They obviously were nursing damage earlier on, pitted to get it fixed, pitted at the time that they thought would be fine to then make it till the end of the race with. Of course, it's a bit of a gamble, one they'll be hoping to pay off, as DBR have just gotten ahead of Brab Alpha by higher time. That's up into 7th place in BLC 2. See if we can get a quick replay of the move there. Soon enough, as soon as it appears in our event viewer. Here we go. No, this is the different one. This is it, just up the inside, coming towards the second sort of S's section, the chicane that's not quite a chicane. It's really wonderful, though. It's one of my favourite sections of this circuit. Oh, dearie me. This was Abel caught. Just almost driving off the circuit to get out of the way of a huge gaggle of cars.
Back with Guder start. Here goes a little bit deep, but that might just be the line in the Porsche Cup. Oh, gets very, very sideways there at the exit of turn 2, and hey, that was quite the showmanship from the Norwegian here. He's getting very, very loose with the tail end of this car. and seems to me like a driver who's really pushing on. Well, for the end of this race, either though it could also be that they know they have an extra pit stop and they're trying to push out the advantage to whoever they could end up staying out in front of. We'll have to see how that plays out. At the end of the race, it's just a little bit hard to be really to be able to predict at this point. However, Christoph Raas here, Edward, is now falling into the clutches of another Christoph. It's Christoph Ebenyo, and would certainly be it would be heartbreak for the Firaco eSports team to see themselves fall off the podium here and now. You would hate to see it, but it seems to be a different Christoph Raas, Edward. It's a 128.05 on his last lap from a driver that was so dialed and was really slicing through the traffic on his opening stint. He's now getting chased down by Christoph Ebenyo, and the gap is 2.5 seconds here.
Yeah, that is, I don't know, surprising to see for certain, because, like you mentioned, it's not the same driver that we saw behind the wheel. We're used to seeing Christoph Raas really being committed, aggressive, was commanding this race almost for long periods of it. And then it sort of has started to become a little bit unraveled. Christoph Ebenyo very much in the picture. But let's not forget the credential of Christoph himself. He was there battling with Jonathan Poulet, keeping him honest, and for a few moments overtaking him and battling for that third place. So he'll be looking to do the exact same to get that third place, but this time against a different car, against the Lamborghini rather than the Audi. Traffic's falling fairly kindly at the moment for Christoph Raas, who's going to dive up the inside into turn one. Oh, that was very close. Was there going to be contact? He's having to fight it all the way around the outside now. It's difficult, and this is going to slow down Christoph a huge amount.
Yeah.
Not working out for him whatsoever. It's in both of these drivers' best interests to not fight this, to not have this battle last too long. Christoph Raas does end up getting ahead, but at cost to his gap. It was just over 2 seconds. Now it's only over 1. A full second taken out of his advantage. This third position fight.
SimWorld.be Rapid on that 114 car now finally coming into the pits for their, I think will be their final pit stop. Jelle Verstraeten and Fastlane Motorsports in the 912 car here will probably have to pit again as well, or they will have to pit again as well, because they still have a final driver stop to do. Same for Jens Goossens here. So both of these teams still within touching distance. The SimWorld.be Rapid. They'll be loving the look of that. I think that is quite certain. Stefan Verhofstadt here also needs to get his final pit stop done and dusted for. I don't think they're going to be within striking distance of the SimWorld.be Rapid car from behind when they pit in. I think the position of the 6 car is going to be safe. Given they had trouble early on as well, Edward, been a very strong drive to secure the points. Of course, they'll have a pit stop to do, so we do still expect the 100 Arnage competition car with Fabrice Cornelis at the wheel here to be sitting the virtual lead. But regardless, it's been, as I said, a strong comeback drive from the number 6 here as well, and certainly deserving of the points. A very strong championship defense here as they come in to the pits for their final pit stop. Just a tad under 40 minutes remaining of this race. Now Christoph Raas has some serious company from Christoph Ebenyo, who's looking to grab third place for Boots and VDS by undercut.
Yeah, this is really not working in the favour of Rugby Sports White. The traffic not favoured them at all on this most recent stint, and there's yet more to contend with now, as you can see, going through turn 2 up towards turn 3. This left-hander is awash with BLC 1 cars, and also you can see the BLC 3 just crossed around the outside, coming up to these next couple of corners, these long sweepers where the BLC 1 cars have loads of pace. They just can't put it down on account of the traffic being in just the most difficult place to be. Look at this now, coming out of the corner, nice and clear to the inside. Christophe Herbignaud, all he can do is just sit back and watch and wait, and now it's his turn to lose time, but with a good exit, all of a sudden that disadvantage is completely negated. Now down towards this lovely little S's section, you got the right-hander by the left. The way the car's weight shifts over there, it's really fun to be behind the wheel of. Christophe Herbignaud, look at this, perfectly done, just following car ahead through the traffic is exactly what you need to do. Make the car ahead do all the work, and then you just slide on through nice and easily. And you see it obviously from Christophe's point of view there. It's sort of like an art form, isn't it, Hassa, the way that they have to carve through the traffic, the way they sort of use the cars ahead to punch a hole through it all.
Yeah, very much so, and it's it is indeed an art form, as you say. It's and every track has a flow of its own, and places where overtakes are sort of possible, and where they perhaps would be possible as well, but certainly not within the realms of either efficiency or safety. And whoever masters this art form the best over the course of a team and over the course of 3 hours for a race like this is usually the team's going to end up on top as well. And it's such a difficult thing to get right as the Boutsen car gets caught up there through the chicane by the Team Vision 992, and then sort of blocked off there on the outside as well. I think Christophe Herbignaud will have had a slightly, let's just say, maybe a moment of squeaky bum time there. But that was a bit of a sketchy one. But he's still there, still alive and kicking. Lost about half a second, of course. That's something you'll easily be able to live with in a situation like this. We're seeing yet more cars exiting the pits from that final round of pit stops. And looking across the field as well, not that many cars within real close contentions. We have the DBRP car here of Mitchell Custers and Sibo Barrebrooks, and the 81 up ahead. Still sitting strong and pretty there in 5th place, but under a fair challenge from the DBRP car. And actually, interestingly so, it's another 5.5 seconds down the road into the DBR sister car of Lucas Romano here. So 5th place, still very much up for grabs in BLC 2. And then, of course, that battle for sufficiently, well, actually, when looking at it, I thought this was 3rd and 4th, but it's actually 5th and 6th, and this is opened up as well with the Rata Racing Panda car. I've gotten that front end fixed. Oh, a squeeze on the inside of the Eagle Speed Academy Mercedes there. I think that was the 485 car of Matthias Ronsani. And David van Glabeke, I'm afraid, has had a major issue. Let's see what happened to him here. It's in the chicane. Is the car gonna... Oh, it's just touching the grass, and that's gonna be heavy impact, I'm afraid. Very much so. And at this late stage of the race, they're probably gonna keep on plowing away that front end certainly now looking the worse for wear. And it's just going to follow up on that battle for 5th place. It's Jarne Diersmans in the Bravo by airtime. That's, of course, the 42 machine. And then the Raider Racing Panda car of Hans Blankert. Both of these drivers should be on their final stints, at least from what I can see. And so it will be a race to the line. Very equal lap times from the two on the last lap that we can see. Christophe Urbigneau, the pace of the field at the moment. Is he still trying to chase down Christoph Raas? And you could say he's chased him down, but it's the part with passing him that seems to be a little bit of an issue.
Smartly done there by the Arnage competition pink card, getting well out of that fight. There's plenty of time that they have to the cars behind, so it's no real sense getting involved in an intense battle for the bottom step of the BLC1 podium. Very cleverly done. Christoph Reis will be grateful, of course, that it doesn't slow him up in his defence of that all-important podium place. Both of these two teams hungry for a good result. Speaking of a good result, though, this is exactly what Arnage competition need in their defence of the title. Obviously, reigning champions from last season. They're continuing to lead in stylish fashion in the leader BLC. Ooh, that's Vegard Godestad pushing a little bit too hard into turn 2. And then that's ART Sim Racing getting right up close and personal. No overtake being made, but actually it is just up on down the inside. Wow, so all of a sudden now it's Chris Bowers up into second and game on in BLC 2.
And with that, that's what Carlos Diegues in the number 1 car is coming up to as well. Always a bit of a precarious situation as well. When you're catching up to a hot battle like this, of course, just that slight bit of distance in between them might be all that Diegues needs to just make it a routine pass on both of them. Of course, it's made quite a lot easier when you do have that that half a second's worth of spread, gives you plenty of physical room to sort of slot your machine in between, just as a temporary station of getting through. Godestad is having none of getting out of the way. He's trying to catch up to the car in second at the moment. Bavo Fallen is in the pits. Here comes the send from Carlos Diegues as we're into the final half an hour here, Edward. And up ahead, Christophe Urbigneau, still on the tail of his namesake, more or less. Christoph Raas, although spelled slightly differently, it's still the same. And it really proves the point that catching is indeed one thing, passing is quite another, because it's been a fair few number of laps now that, for better or for worse, Christophe Urbigneau has just been stuck here in behind the Firaco car. With, well, we've seen attempts, but not a real chance of getting through. Edward, you've driven these GT3 cars, I believe, quite a bit more than I have. And do you know just how heavy the effects of dirty air, for instance, is in a duel like this, with around 3, 4, 5 tenths of a second in a GT3?
Yeah, it is fairly strong. It's all about just trying to take alternative lines to negate it as much as possible and focus more on the corner exits at the key areas, such as this corner here. It's all about just maybe compromising your run through the chicane a little bit and putting yourself in the best position to get those runs out of the corners. It's very difficult, of course, because just one little mistake, one misstep offline and getting onto the marbles again with the dirty air, it can make it all the more difficult. Of course, the slipstream being as close as possible can help, but when the car ahead does that, you're almost forced into a difficult situation of having to follow them through as to not risk losing time. That was exactly what the car of Christoph Reis was doing there, just diving up the inside and then forcing Herbigno to essentially follow him through. Now, this is the battle for second place in BLC 2. Belcar got a start in third place, that 877 Valkyrie car, closing down, doing the best that he can do to make it till the end of the race. Obviously, this will help him out with fuel saving, but of course, he wants to be ahead as well of this ART sim racing car. It's all go, isn't it? I was thinking that we might be in for a bit more of a quiet, more pedestrian finish to proceedings here tonight, but it seems that it's anything but, as we are getting into the later stages where the battles do tend to close down. Christoph Reis really uncomfortable there. You can see in behind the BMW. Now getting out and around, but having to defend to the inside. As Herbigno sensed a bit of an opportunity and might sense another one. You can see BLC 3 class traffic just slightly getting in the way. Both of them diving up the inside. That Ferrari car was never going to hold up Christoph, was he? Getting well out of the way through the final corner.
Yeah, it's just a slight helping hand for the umpteenth time this race for Christoph Reis, taking advantage of his traffic mastery and just extending ever so slightly. It's 8/9 of a second. Further down the order, around a minute behind these two, it's still Jarne Biersmans, followed by Hans Blankart. The gap there also just about a second. And then in BLC 2, still have Chris Lauers as well, holding on to second place, just ahead of Jo Vegard Godestad. Is it going to be the move here, Edward? He's close this time around. He's still closing. And is it going to be anything hardly even? Maybe just waiting to pounce at the right time, taking advantage of the slipstream in order to save that little bit extra fuel. That could be a thing. Oh, we see the gap closing yet again in traffic. Well driven by Christoph Reis. Time and time again, he makes sure to pass the traffic, not only in places, but in a way as well. It doesn't necessarily allow Christoph Herbigno in behind to follow directly through. And every time he does that, that gives him that little bit of breathing space in behind. As with the three battles we've had that are close at the moment around the field, Edward, they all tell the same story of this being a relatively hard track to overtake at least when you're facing a dogged defense, as we're seeing here as well from Chris Lauers and ART Sim Racing, the 11 car, doing everything they can to hold on to second place.
Yeah, definitely, and it's the dirty area is an issue not just in the GT3 cars, but also in these Porsche Cup machines as well. I'll say I'm more experienced in the slightly more understeery side of things in the GT3 field with the Mercedes and the BMW. Whereas in these Lamborghinis and Porsches, the dirty air can materialize it a bit more instability into the car rather than understeer, making them slightly more snappier, making them more difficult to put the power down coming out of the corner as well. A little bit of uncertainty as you're turning in. It's all of those little things that make it just ever so difficult for cars in behind to follow. We have a replay here, and this is Alex Irons. It's just, oh, that's a very weird incident. It looked like the car got hooked around on the curb. Over rotating the car through turn 3, gets back up onto the circuit without any issue. The car's behind, impedes, so nicely done. Here we go. Godestad dropping back from Chris Lauers a little bit, just the traffic not working in his favour. These two still close as ever, nose to tail. I think we've also got a battle with Reiter Racing Panda chasing down 5th place Bravo by Hoyer time. This was Lucas Romano and DBR going up the inside of Costas. I think that was more of a team play more than anything from DBR and DBRP. Here we go with the Reiter Racing Panda car chasing down the sort of blue Lamborghini. And now that car's repaired and looking nice and clean, it's got a decent bit of pace about it. That 177 Audi into the final near enough 20 minutes worth of racing here, Hatter. It's really hotting up in BLC 1.
Yeah, and the drivers that have been defending now for, well, basically as long as there still tends to remain in the race, they'll be believing more and more that they can actually hold on to what they're having at the moment. And there'll be nothing given away, at least not willingly, at the end of proceedings here. Fastest lap in the BLC class for Yuri Crispain. Really flying at the moment. 26 seconds though still to close on Fabrice Cornelis, so I don't think that's gonna happen. Well, Christoph Raas continues to see off Christophe Urbagnot, although I see a little bit difficult for the prospects of Christoph Raas having to hold on to this for another 20 minutes. There can be no mistakes for the very least. But given the first stint from Christoph Raas was indeed bloody brilliant, then I wouldn't put it past him to be able to hold on to this. But you can see as soon as they're out of traffic that Christophe Urbagnot is definitely seeming to have just that little bit more pace in the car. Hans Blankart is trying to make efficient work of the 11 car, and the Reiter car just sneaks on through as well. That was a little bit of a push, but with 20 minutes to go, Edward, you're in the zone of the race where you have to make these decisions in a split second, and you sort of have to be aggressive as well, because if you lose time by now, you're also running out of time to gain it back, and desperation will be setting in maybe for some of these drivers. Been caught behind in some of the battles we've seen around the field here opening over the course of this final stint. If that desperation kicks in, it could just force you into making that mistake. And look at this! Christophe Urbagnot getting slowed down by what I think is the leading BLC 3 car of Fabrice Cornelis. It is indeed. Fabrice Cornelis doing nothing wrong. He can't disappear. It's the nature of endurance racing, but it does give Christoph Raas a little bit of breathing space. Lucas Romano has gone through on Mitchell Custer, so that's the two DBR cars. Let's see here what happened with Lucas Romano coming through on teammate. Well, that's carbon copy of the move we saw the other way around about 10-15 minutes ago.
There we go. Yanni Wiesmann's pulling away now from Hans Blankart in the Reiter Racing Panda car. Christoph Reis as well, trying to pull away from Christophe Urbagnot, and they have clear air now. Nothing to worry about, so we'll see how these two match up without the traffic playing a part. You can see the dirty air was really hampering Christophe from turning into that right-hander. It was just sluggish and went a bit shy of the apex, and then as soon as you get thrown off the line around this circuit, it's all about the flow, and you can really lose a whole load of time just trying to claw it back.
And it's true with these complexes of corners.
It's actually really nice there, though, actually just through there by Urbagnot, because you avoided that curb on the left-hander, that final, that sort of part of the S's, and now he's right up behind was able to close down so quickly through those couple of corners, and the pressure is certainly mounting. Not the heaviest braking zone into turn 1, so there isn't really the biggest opportunity to send a move. It's more just about relying on a driver making a mistake up ahead, piling that pressure on, which Christoph is doing an excellent job of. You can see now how the dirty is affecting the car. It struggles to turn into, instead he aims for that later apex, slows him on initial turn in, but on the power out of the corner again, all of that time that he loses, he manages to gain back. Trying to carry the speed through the corner again. It's just starting to pull a little bit out from the corners and not quite get to where he needs it to be. But then through this chicane, you're going to see it even more. Car really not happy on the turn in through the right-hander, but look at the run he's got on all of a sudden. Really closing down now. That gap is going to come down to within about 1/10 of a second. He's going to look to the inside. Is he going to be late on the brakes? No, because the defence there, Christoph Reis slamming the door shut, not letting there be any opportunity for a dive onto the brakes. The second to last corner comes a little bit too soon for a move, and again Christoph covers that inside. He's having to make his Lamborghini as wide as possible, parking it on the apex on the way out of the corner because he saw that Herbenio was going for the switchback. Now into turn 1. Is he going to cover the inside? Is Herbenio going to go for it? Not close enough to really dive. Again, you have to take too much speed into the corner. It's not really worth making it side by side. Now, here we go. There's a little bit of traffic to come up with. Can Christoph take advantage towards turn 3? Again, once more looking for that later apex, getting on the power of that little bit earlier, but then struggling on the exit on account of that dirty air. It's so much more prevalent when you see the onboard, just how the cars react, Hasser, isn't it? Gives you a great sense of what the drivers are having to contend with.
Yeah, it's certainly much more dramatic as well, seeing the movements and actions of the car from on board than seeing it on the outside shot. There's the 114 is... Well, the old sub Christoph Herbenio pretty badly there. Of course, by no fault of his own. It's just a matter of timing.
Exactly.
But it's yet again given Christoph Rast a little bit of extra breathing space here.
It's that chicane where Herbenio seems to be the stronger. Maybe it's just down to the way the cars are set up. Maybe it's more for those tight twisty corners. Because even in the slipstream, it doesn't appear like Vincent VDS car is closing as much. So maybe it's just a slight difference in setup, as this was a brief moment from Fabrice Cornelis, the BLC 3 class leader, but it's about as dramatic as probably the most dramatic moment of his race so far. There's Lucas Wynant, I think, gets away with that one just about. A little bit of an off-track excursion, but nothing too severe, as once again traffic playing its part. Christoph Herbenio stuck all the way around the outside. No real room to go. Traffic again, this time taking play in the other battle for the 5th place. Hans Belcar stuck behind. That is the Brab machine in BLC 2. So, all of a sudden, what were some very close battles have started to expand just a brief bit, Hasser, but still just about 13 minutes to go in the race. Time for maybe a couple of surprises still in store.
Yeah, I think it's important for the drivers to remember as well not to overcook the tires at this stage, because it's so easy just to take 2-3 laps where you push that a little bit too much and the temperature starts to creep up in the core of the tire, and that's when it becomes more and more difficult to let the tire cool off. Of course, the shorter the straights on a track is, the less cooling you sort of get from the air passing by as the car is moving quickly, and then especially at a track like this that has quite a number of these relatively long corners and corners that are sort of connected to one another as these complexes of the track, as you would call it. All of this is making it pretty demanding on the tires. So we could also see some of the cars that have been pushing on to gain positions on track here over the last 10-15 minutes. Just run into situations where all of a sudden they've sort of worn out their pace advantage with the tires underneath them, and it's just going to be a forlorn mission in the end. But let's just see what is going to be of these fights here. Janne Biersmans in the 42, Bravo by airtime in that Lamborghini, still holding on to 5th place. And Hans Blankart and the Racer Racing Panda machine, 177, very much in contention for that aforementioned 5th spot. And Christophe Urbanio now starting to close the gap onto Christoph Raas yet again, as we're entering the last 10 minutes of racing here. It's certainly drivers that are running out of time to challenge here.
Yeah, just seeing now. I was expecting the cars to close down as much as they have done. We saw the gap extend to about 1.5 seconds. We thought, oh, it might be, maybe about 5 more minutes. We might see them close together in the final 5. Just add some more spice. But no, all of a sudden, those BLC 1 battles have remained, or rather closed up yet again. So that is certainly promising for the remainder of this race and for the excitement here in the virtual Belcar. The first time outing at Oschersleben certainly hasn't disappointed, has it, Hauser? And it's close as ever. Maybe not across all of the classes, but definitely we have 2 very intense battles to keep our eyes on. And it's that Racer Racing Panda car really taking a lot of time out of that Bravo car, but then can't quite get the moves done, which is the same in the case of the battle for 3rd. That Boots and VDS car has the pace, but the defense being put up by Viraco eSports White is very strong indeed.
It has to be said that a determined defense here at Oschersleben can be very hard to deal with. And it seems as well that the driver trying to overtake is to a certain degree dependent on whoever's in front just making that mistake, basically. But we'll see here. Christoph Raas is now finding Mr. Urbanio here very close to his tail yet again. And the 17 Boots and VDS by undercut car is going to be going for it. Going to be going for the late apex. And the fastest lap in the race for at least the personal fastest
Racer Racing
lap.
Panda trying to go for that position. You can see that gap has gone very close. They're side by side in the final corner. He pushes him out wide, muscles his way through. That was a come by Hans Blankart. Really nicely done as well. It was a little bit elbows out, but it wasn't dirty. That was the main thing. It was authoritative, and that is what I love to see. Great move there for 5th place. You'll see it there. Oh, there was a little bit of RG. So it's a bit of give and a bit of take, isn't it? Lovely move by Hans up the inside. It was a little bit tricky on the exit of the second to last corner when they came together, but thankfully it didn't result in a big enough incident to take them out of the action. There we go.
I'll
Flash of the headlights to look up the inside. No, maybe not. It could still be on, Could be a bit of retaliation, a bit of a fight back to take 5th place.
And I'll tell you what. Some close action here. I'll tell you what, Edward. At this point, passing someone basically just means that you'll have to fight him again. Oh, and it all comes to a sad end, I'm afraid. This challenge, at least, could look like it with that contact for the 42. It's cost them time. The question, there's been just how much time? 2.5 seconds. And then follow-up question being whether or not there is damage to that car. Was the RPM
follow-up
car
question
up?
is also, let's have a look at the battle for 3rd, because I think they're going side by side here. They are. A bit of traffic's gotten involved, but holding the inside line. Is he too deep? He's going to be vulnerable now for a switchback maneuver. Has he parked it on the apex? No, he hasn't. There's a little bit of a rush, but driving out of the corner, using the curb on the exit, Christoph Raas lives to fight another day, but that close. Ooh,
this
dearie
was
me.
the
Christophe
closest.
Urbino came so close to tasting that podium, but there's still 7 minutes to go in this race. Here we go again.
Urbino knows he has to line it up for turn 2 if he can. And equally, Christoph Raas up ahead. There's a weight to it, and he sort of holds off just on the apex, maybe just to make it hard for Urbino to get that straight, clean run from the corners. So far, while it is under 0.2 of a second, Urbino just not close enough to safely send it in.
Oh, that was a little bit of a bump on the curb. That unsettled the Veraco car a bit. They're both pushing so hard. You can see the cars are just barely hanging on. This is nice from Christoph. He's hanging back a little bit to get on the power nice and early to get the run. This could be a brilliant move for third place. See if he's going to get it done side by side. Is he late enough on the hang it all the way through? No, he backs out yet again, looking for the switchback, which just isn't coming through. But that was really nicely set up, as you could see he was giving a few car lengths just because he saw the traffic and what that would have done to Veraco up ahead. Really clever by Christoph. He just wasn't quite able to make it stick. Final 5 minutes now. Oh, it's edge of your seat stuff.
When you saw that run, the Boutsen VDS car, the 17, got right there, that looked like a done deal. But the short straights here at Oschersleben certainly making it quite a lot more difficult, especially taking into consideration that you also have the well, not so hard braking zones in most of the track, at least, as you mentioned a few times, Edward. It makes it all the harder for the cars to get past one another. But in a way, I think we've seen it here tonight. I think
More traffic.
The brilliance of this track is that while it's hard to overtake, it doesn't seem impossible. And as such, the battles we've seen has been really, really good. But yes, indeed, it's yet again Jarne Biersmans. This time, he's on the tail of Babo Fullen. I think he's been catching up there.
Some more traffic ahead of that Veraco car, the car Christoph Reis. Look, he's got several BLC2 cars to try and navigate his way through, and these are the hardest cars for these BLC1 cars to overtake because they're so closely matched on pace. Look at this, darting to the inside, being very commanding with the way he's trying to overtake. Gets one done. Christoph Urbino having to fight side by side. Might be slightly difficult in towards turn 1, but I think you can hear the Porsche has lifted out of it. Now into turn 1. That was so close. Looking around the outside, Christoph is going to just try and put his car in the right position to get on the power. Ooh, it's a little bit of a squeeze onto the apex. I'm not sure if they saw Christoph coming through in behind Christoph Reis. Joseph just noticed it's the battle of the Christophs.
It is
Christoph Reis versus Christoph Urbino. How have we taken this long of this battle to notice?
I mentioned this about half an hour ago.
Oh, I have been in my own little world. I've been too enamored by the action on circuit to have paid any attention to. No, sorry, that was completely my bad. My mind has been on the on-track action, sadly, and it's been a great little bit of battling. Christoph Reis now has just 3 minutes to hang on to around this Oschersleben circuit. For he's to get onto the podium for Veraco eSports White. With some VDS by Undercut Red would dearly love to take that away from him, though. Carlos Vegas, don't think there's going to be anyone taking anything away from him. Look at that little look to the inside. It's just forcing Christoph to take unconventional and maybe not the lines he would want to do.
2.5 minutes now remaining. And still no way through for Urbino. And Boutsen VDS by Undercut. It's been a brave fight, to say the very least, from the 14 Veraco eSports car. They will be cheering him on, most probably in silence, at least on the radio. Just letting him do his thing. I think here Christoph Raas will be needing full concentration for just a few more laps, for just a few more minutes. He will be on the podium, but it is by no means given that that's how it's gonna end. Oh, he's able to really drive the car out of the corners as well here, Christoph Urbaniot. Looking like it could be ever so slightly a pace advantage compared to the 14 Furaco Lamborghini up ahead. Now here, Edward, the clock says 1 minute and 10 seconds, and with that, I wonder if we're actually going to get one more lap after this one before we get the checkered flag out, or if it's going to be, well, I guess it is going to be the white flag after this lap when Carlos Dieguez is passing the line here the next time around. 50 seconds now to go. And what a brilliant race it's been from Anage Competition GT3, the number one car, Edward, it has to be said. In the heat of battle here, we're watching the duel for third place still. We just have to mention Anage and Valkyrie as well, but especially Anage, the coolness they've shown throughout this race, showing no stress from being behind Furaco over the opening stint. Just playing their own strategy, and a brilliant strategy call as well that helped them along the way to defeating the Valkyrie car, who, as we've spoken about, Edward, has been so strong on the fuel saving, on the strategy this year, that it seems like they've been beaten at their own game, sort of.
Yeah, it's been great to see, and I think that middle stint by Ricardo Ferreira that saw them put in good stead for Carlos Dieguez to take control and do what he does best, which is get that gap and then just extend it to make it a commanding victory for Anage Competition GT3. Around about half a lap to go, and they will taste victory here at Oschersleben. Now, though, the white flag has been waved for these two. They know now that there are limited opportunities to stay ahead or to get ahead. Christoph Reis, with some traffic to contend with as well, gets past the BLC 3 machine. That is, I believe, of Yuri Crispin. The Traxxas by JDOS Classic Cars car in second place, but we will shift to Carlos Dieguez, who rounds the final corner to win the race here at Oschersleben in the virtual Belcar. The first time we've been here, and what a victory for them to extend their championship lead. Meanwhile, Hasse, here we go. Game on for third place in BLC 1. And confirm that Arnage Competition Pink have come through to win BLC 2. So Arnage Competition have won both in BLC 1, BLC 2, and now in BLC 3. So it's a clean sweep for all of the Arnage Competition cars. I don't think we've ever seen that in the history of the virtual Belcar. What a performance by all of them here tonight. And now into the final corner, defending for his life. Put your hands together, everyone in the YouTube chat. What a race that was. What a defense as well from Christoph Reis to keep Christoph Urbaniot at bay for that length of time. There weren't any untoward moves, nothing underhand, nothing dirty. It was perfectly clean racing. And I tell you what, that was a brilliant show both those drivers put on for us. Both of the Christophs really delivered at the end there. But real talking point has to be, Hasse, all of the Arnage Competition cars tasting victory. Wow.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever seen that before. That is indeed true, at least to the, well, not so best of my memory, because there is no best with my memory, I guess. But indeed, a super, super impressive performance across the board from Arnage Competition over all classes. Brilliant indeed. There, Christoph Raas, third place for Furaco. I think it's the first time for them on the podium this season as well. So a big congrats to them as well. So close for Boots and VDS by undercut in terms of making the podium, just off of it. in the end. And then Yuri Crispain on the number 6 Traxxas by JWS Classic Cars, Edward, doing a very good job of securing that second place, and in doing so, also making sure that they defend their championship lead. And Edward, with that said, we're gonna go to the results here. We could just get the right class on one at a time. Maybe it's these ones here. No. Oh yeah. The curse is strong with me today, even against myself. Here we have it, ladies and gents, the race results from BLC1. It is the number 1 car of an Arch competition, GT3, taking the win ahead of the 677 Valkyrie X-Cybe competition, with Firaco eSports White rounding off the podium with the 14 car in third place. Just 0.3 of a second clear of the Bootsen VDS by undercut red car, the number 17, getting in fourth, with Rata Racing Panda fifth, Sim Formula Europe in sixth place, then Bravo by Airtime seventh, Sim Racing BE by ROI Management getting eighth place in BLC1. It's RPM GT ninth, and the stricken retirees of Simpact Noises for the first time this season, I'm afraid, not finishing the race and being classified as 10th there. It would take us through the results of an exciting evening in BLC2 as well.
Thank you very much, Hasser. And it is Arnage Competition Pink that take top honours in BLC2 with a commanding 45-second lead to ART Sim Racing in second place. ART Sim Racing, who capitalised on a late mistake by Valkyrie X-Cybe. 877 car struggling a little bit through turn 2. They finished in second and third, respectively. ART Sim Racing there in fourth place, 1 lap down from class winners. Head of Brab Charlie by Ectimo. DBRP finishing 2 laps down ahead of Team Vision. Then Brab Alpha by Higher Time. And then Team DBR involved in that little incident we saw between themselves. And I think it was one of the BLC1 cars, wasn't it? I think, was it?
Yeah, it was.
Beesmans, I think, wasn't it? Jana Beesmans that was involved in that incident. Going to be interesting to see what the stewards might make of that one. It was unfortunate. Down in 9th position, still though ahead of Team RPM. And now, Hassan, take us through the BLC3 results.
It's been a brilliant drive for the 100 Arch Competition Eau Rouge car, surviving the attrition in the opening laps to settle in and win the race by a healthy half a minute from the championship leading Traxxas by JWS Classic Cars. The number 6 Mercedes, after a strong return and a strong defensive drive to pick up what was left there. SimWorld.be Rapid, the 114, getting third place in BLC3 at the end, ahead of Fastlane Motorsports in the 912 car. Eagle Speed Academy Esports with the 485 Mercedes, fifth in class, ahead of the 101 Arch Competition Light BMW. Digitrex Sim Racing Team in the 999 gets 7th, ahead of Squadra Veloce by Fastlane Motorsports in the 446 car. They get 8th place. Eagle Speed Academy Esports in the 484 machine, 9th, ahead of Firaco Esports Black, Valkyrie X-Cybe GT4, and Vesno Motorsports last and 12th, I'm afraid, in BLC3. And with the results rounded off, Edward, it's time to have a look at the drivers that are waiting to, keenly waiting to interact with us, indeed, as well. And
shall we bring in? Let's bring in. Well, we've got a couple of Arch competition drivers, but shall we bring in the BLC1 class leaders first, Hasser?
Yes.
Here we go then. Just coming into the comms box now for a quick chat with Hasser Roma is our BLC1 class victor, Carlos Tiguez.
Hello. Hey, guys.
Hello, Carlos. Brilliant drive on your part and on the team's part as a whole today. You seem to take it very, very coolly throughout the opening stint, considering that you were behind Firaco and you were losing time. It looked like you had a very early pit stop. We thought that might have been the doom of your strategy, and yet it turned out to be a very well-informed decision. What was that decision based upon?
Because the tires were dead and the temps were high, so we thought of pitting early to take advantage of the colder weather afterwards, and take the tenths that we took pitting early on, I don't know, maybe 10 laps, and that gave us a little bit of advantage. But yeah, that was my thinking, and in the end, I think it paid off, and the team was in a little bit higher level compared to the others. Valkyrie, Viraco, and Butsen, maybe the first driver was a bit faster, but the second stint turned the things our way, I guess.
And that leads me perfectly to the next question, because it seems that it's always, but it doesn't really seem, it's before you've had both of the drivers in the car that you can really see where the team stands. And that was very much the case today. And you've been on that sort of level throughout this season. Is that what you hope to be maybe the factor that can bring you the championship? Just that extra bit of consistency in the width of the team as well?
Obviously, this is a team event, and the main thing is to be a team. So not thinking in me or my teammate or whatever, we have to think in the team and be competitive. But this race I wasn't quite so prepared. At personal level, I think I can do better. Maybe the next race, who knows? But the main thing is to have a good car overall. And yeah, that's what I think.
Indeed, Carlos. And as we just saw on screen as well, there was quite a big incident, basically exiting turn 2 on the opening lap. From your perspective, how did you see that?
Quite close. Yeah, that was a race decider, I think, because if Valkyrie and Butsen could just be in front, maybe the race would take another way. But fortunate for us and for Viraco, Viraco was also gave me 7 seconds, I think, on the first stint. Yeah, and I think it was a race definer right there. I don't know. Valkyrie, I think it closed too much, and Viraco and Butsen had no choice to go straight. So, thank you guys.
Indeed. Just before we let you go off to celebrate with the team, Carlos, congratulations on another brilliant win, and of course, keeping the championship lead intact, and not only that, actually growing it well here with just 2 more rounds of the championship remaining. Is there anyone you'd like to give a thanks or a shout out to before being let off the hook here?
Obviously to our rivals, to Valkyrie, to Viraco, to Butsen, and to our other cars and our sponsors, mainly. Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Well, thanks for taking the time to have a bit of a chat as well, Carlos. We hope to have a chance to chat to you as well at the end of one of these other races, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you. Good night.
Cheers. So that was Carlos Dieguez, race winner for our Anash competition and the number 1 BLC1 car. Edward, we're going to bring in another race winner in another class, but from the same team. It's David Sobrero, and here he is with Edward May.
Yes, thank you very much, Hassa. David, you join us in the comms box, and this is, I think, the first time we've actually had a chance to chat to you here in the virtual Belcar. How does it feel to be a race victor here at the first time we've come to the Oschersleben circuit?
I don't know, to be honest, because this is my first race here, and we were not expecting to win at all. The race was so difficult, and I came here, I didn't know what to expect, and it just feels amazing to win on the first race, I guess.
Yeah, it's great to see you in behind the wheel, and just talk us through, obviously, the preparation that goes into the events. Being a first-time driver and having some teammates that have done it before, have they been able to help you out at all?
So 1 week before, they told me there was a spot in the Porsche Cup on the team, and I offered myself to race here. just for the experience, you know. So I started practicing with some teammates, Ricardo Ferreira especially. He helped me a lot on the setup work and on the overall preparation. And yeah, I was doing just laps after laps for some days, and I felt pretty confident for today. So yeah, I think my team especially helped a lot in that preparation phase, and that shows the result today. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And also, it wasn't plain sailing. While it was comfortable in the final couple of stints, the first stint, you were caught up in that sort of incident in the first lap. Just talk us through your perspective of it, because I think you got caught up in the middle of it.
Yeah, that was just terrible. Like I was on the straight on the first lap, and I was praying for everything less that there crash. I didn't want to get involved in the crash, and when I saw smoke ahead, I was, oh god, it's all over. Because I had cars on my left, so I didn't have anywhere to go. I braked, but cars behind, of course, they were close, so we got together. Luckily enough, the other team that was very competitive, Valkyrie, they got damage as well. So we were equally on the same pace, because if that didn't happen, the win was gone for today. So yeah, that was everything that I didn't want for the first stint.
Absolutely not. But it's great to have you in with us. We'll be expecting to see you in future rounds of the virtual Belcar, maybe for the remainder of the season. Now we've got rounds at Mount Panorama and at the 24 Hours of Zolder to close out the season.
Maybe if there's a spot on the team, I can join. So yeah, that depends on the other guys, my other teammates, of course.
Yeah. Also, while we've got you, I've got to ask, how are the arms feeling? It must be pretty tiring behind the wheel of these cars, considering you don't really have a whole lot of help from the traction control or anything to keep the car stable.
Yes. Not only the arms, but everything, because I didn't want to start the race because I need to pee. So I don't know. It was everything was going wrong on the beginning, you know. So
Is that why you were so fast in that first stint? You were just driving quick to get back to the loo.
Exactly. I just wanted to get to the bathroom. That's why I peed early, actually. No, I'm joking. But yeah,
No,
because because the car was so damaged, the steering was broken. So yeah, that made a lot more difficult for my arms. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it was great to have you here, and we hope to see you for more rounds of the virtual Belcar. You've been a real treat for our screens, and fingers crossed we see you next time out at Bathurst.
Thank you so much, and I hope so.
No worries. Before we say goodbye to you, anybody you'd like to give a shout out on the broadcast, the floor is yours.
Yeah, for sure. First of all, the sponsor of our Nudge competition team and all the teammates there, and a special thanks to Ricardo Ferreira, because he's helping me a lot to grow, not only on iRacing but on the team as well. So yeah, I have to give a big shout out to him, and for Manuel as well, my teammate, because he made a very special, or he was a very important part of the win today. So yeah.
Lovely to hear that, mate. We'll hope to see you next time out at Bathurst, but if not, congratulations, and you've certainly left your mark on this championship if this is the only time we'll see you. Take care, buddy.
Yeah, thank you so much. Hope to see you next time.
Thank you very much, mate. And there we go, Hasse. Lovely to chat with the BLC 2 class winner, David, on his first appearance in the virtual Belcar, getting the race victory. Certainly no mean feat. And I know you've brought in a driver that you're just itching to have a word with because he had a brilliant race. Why don't you take us away with Christoph Reis?
Well, yes, indeed, Christoph. Welcome to the booth. And I had to say that has to be the drive of the season for you and the team. Third place here on the podium after a beautiful, beautiful race. Not only holding the lead by 7 seconds at the end of the opening stint, but also fighting like a madman at the end to keep a hold of the podium position. How does it feel like right now?
Good evening, gentlemen. Nice to chat with you again. Feels honestly amazing. I'm so devastated right now, like in means of being tired, and I really need a shower. But it's been so enjoyable to do this race. I'm very glad to have this fight. Very glad to enjoy my time here. Even despite having my teammate falling sick this morning and having Mathieu as a backup plan, very, very last minute. So a big shout out to him to get up to the pace very, very quickly.
That's mightily impressive indeed. You seem to be super, super strong in the traffic, especially this evening, continually taking out time on the opposition where it was perhaps the most difficult. What was the sort of the key to your success in that area?
Yeah, I agree. Of course, in Oschersleben, the track is very narrow, so you can try to take advantage of that. And I believe my last experience in the 25 hours of the Fun Cup definitely helped there. There's a lot of traffic management going on. And yeah, the more you do this, the more experience you gain and the smarter moves you can make.
So it's sort of a track that has sort of the same dynamics going on for it as you would say as maybe Road Atlanta, that has sort of places on the track where you just cannot overtake, and you sort of have to either time it or lift off early in order not to get held up.
Yeah, exactly this. Also, of course, luck plays a bit of a role, but yeah, sometimes you have to force the luck.
Well, traffic giveth and traffic taketh, maybe giving a little bit more to you than was taking in the end. How did you see that opening crash on lap one? I suppose it happened more or less right in front of your eyes.
Yeah, I was quite surprised to see. I think it was a very, very minor contact, and somehow they kind of like stuck together, both ended up in the grass. So I was like, okay, I'll take that. I'll just continue and follow the guy ahead and see where we add up, because I was not like trying to be very aggressive at the beginning, and got lucky that he kind of made a mistake and was able to, yeah, then again benefit from the traffic. But yeah, it was nice to see that those guys just get back on track and keep getting those laps down to get in the lead again.
And then handing over the car to Mathieu with a 7-second lead after the first stint, it must have been quite a lot of pressure as well, especially taking into consideration that it cannot have been that much prep work that Matty has had the time to put in for this race, being on such quick notice.
Exactly, for him. So yeah, quite impressive what he did there. But I think also there are some experience talks. He has done this before, so he has proven again that he can do it. But yeah, in the chat in each other, we just talk like, okay, come on, let's just keep it on the black stuff. If we finish like with a complete car, we know we have a shot at some good results. So yeah, just try and have fun, basically.
And finishing just ahead of Boutsen today must have been important to you in terms of the overall standings. They're just 9 points ahead coming into this round. And you will have been looking to been jumping, I think, both Sim Racing BE and Simpact with the good result here, leaving you, if not in third, then very close indeed coming into Bathurst and, of course, the 24 hours of Solder. Do you think you can go on to grab that third place overall in the end?
Yeah, hard to say. I mean, coming into this race, we weren't looking towards anything in the championship. We thought, yeah, the gap was a bit big, and we were just trying to get some consistent results, maybe again some podium like last time in Spa, and luckily we did. And yeah, I'm not sure about the standings. So if you say we're close to third, of course we'll be aiming for that.
Brilliant stuff, Christoph. Before I let you off the hook, is there anyone you'd like to say a thanks or another kind of appreciate word towards before we let you go?
Yeah, the clear one for tonight goes to Mathieu for his commitment, and then to our sponsor Belcar eSports for again supporting us through this championship.
Well, short but sweet, Christoph. Thanks for taking the time to chat. Congratulations on the strong race and the strong result to you and Matthew as well. Enjoy the weekend, and we wish you all the best until next time.
Thank you. All the best for you as well. Bye-bye.
So that was Christoph Ras, the final interviewee of ours for tonight. And that's going to be the round off of the broadcast as well, I'm afraid. But it's been great getting back into the stride of things. It's going to be about a month and a half, October 20th, when you will see Edward and I back in action. And this time, it's going to be another first off of the virtual Belcar series as we go to Bathurst. And that is something that I'm looking hugely forward to, Edward May. I think it's going to be a show for the ages.
Yeah, definitely. Looking forward to seeing the 5 cars that will make it over the piece. But in all seriousness, it's going to be one where the drivers will have their work really cut out for them, because it's such a technical, tricky circuit. But I can't wait to find out who will tame the mountain next time out in the virtual Belcar.
Rarely has I heard such truth spoken by Edward May. It's been a pleasure having you all along. Thank you so much for joining along in chat. Do leave us a like on the video if you've enjoyed this broadcast, and subscribe to the virtual Belcar channel for more of the very same. Do remember that we have the Skylimit Sprint Cup and the Belcar Clio Cup as well happening with the brilliant Ronald Mons and Andy Baines, in the also very brilliant language of Flemish. And with that said, thanks to our sponsors as well for helping us making this possible in the first place. And with those final words from Edward May and myself, Hasse Rømer, it's been a brilliant evening of racing. It's been brilliant having you all along. Thank you so much for joining us, and until next time, take care, have fun, and bye-bye.